Chapter 898. Inside the prison pagoda, Lian Qian sighed softly. At this moment she was certain that the Shura Empress was Yi Ling, or rather Yi Ling was the Shura Empress. There was no such thing as a past life or present life. As for why the Shura Empress had turned into Yi Ling, she did not know. In front of Yi Xian, Yi Ling said softly, "Come with me." After saying that, she walked towards an underground entrance in the distance. Yi Xian followed. Soon Yi Ling led Yi Xian to a deep underground area. Deep in this area, Yi Xian saw pitch-black iron pillars around him. These iron pillars were entwined with blood-red chains, and in the middle of these iron pillars was a huge hole that was emitting black flames. In the surroundings there were also some experts in golden armor. Seeing Yi Ling, these experts all knelt on the ground. Yi Ling waved her jade-like hand lightly. "Rise?" The experts around her all stood up. Yi Ling looked at the huge hole and said softly, "That is the real hell." Yi Xian looked at the hole. Yi Ling said, "My duty is to guard this place, and now those old geezers down there are getting more and more restless, so I have to go down." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You want me to go down with you?" Yi Ling did not say anything. At this moment, Lian Qian suddenly said, "Big brother, can't you have some self-awareness? Even she can only guard this place. Can you imagine how terrifying this place is? What can you do if you go down with him? Drag him down?" Yi Xian. At this moment Yi Ling suddenly said, "While I go down you can stay here. Under normal circumstances, no one will dare to come here to cause trouble for you." Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. So Yi Ling wanted him to come to this place to take refuge. Yi Xian said, "All right. However, if I'm here with you they..." As he spoke, he looked at the golden armored guards around him. He had to admit that these people were really strong. If these people went to the Worldwide Academy, they would definitely be able to sweep away the entire Worldwide Academy. Too powerful. Meanwhile, Yi Ling spoke abruptly, "They wouldn't dare to disrespect you while you're here. However, you can't ask them to leave as well." When she spoke up to here, she paused for a moment and said, "It's not impossible, but don't ask them to leave this place at will." Yi Xian asked, "Can I dispatch them?" Yi Ling nodded. "Don't mess around." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I won't." Yi Ling opened his palm and a black token appeared in front of Yi Xian. "This is the Azura Order. Seeing it is the same as seeing me." Yi Xian put away the Azura Order and looked down at the cave entrance. "Is it dangerous?" Yi Ling nodded. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said softly, "Be careful." At this moment, a feeling of helplessness arose in his heart. He wanted to go down with Yi Ling, but things were different now. If he went down there he would be a burden to Yi Ling. He would be a burden. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Yi Ling suddenly said softly, "You've done a lot for me in the past. Now," Yi Xian suddenly said, "You're my younger sister. I'm willing to do anything for you and it's only right and proper." Yi Ling gazed at Yi Xian for a short while and then she said softly, "Live well." As soon as she finished speaking she entered the black hole. It didn't take long for a hysterical roar to resound from within. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he saw this. "Miss Lian Qian, what kind of place is that?" Lian Qian said, "Azura Hell. It's a true hell." The previous Azura Lord looked for Master, and he hoped that Master would destroy that place. Master went down there, but for some reason he didn't do anything. At this point she paused and then continued, "There are many dangerous and unknown places in this world. In fact, the most dangerous places are the Void, the Boundless Dungeon, and the Land of Immortality. Those three places are really dangerous." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I don't know if she'll be in danger." Lian Qian said, "Don't worry. With her strength it's very difficult for her to die. You have to work hard to improve your strength. Don't forget that woman only promised not to attack you for a year. Moreover, this woman's words are like farts most of the time. If she suddenly changes her mind one day and comes looking for you, and Yi Ling isn't here, then you can just wait for death." Zhang Wenxiu. Yi Xian nodded. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible. At this moment, two old men suddenly appeared in front of him. These two old men were the two old men who followed Yi Ling. Yi Xian looked at them. "Seniors, how should I address you?" One of the old men said, "Ah Tian." The other old man glanced at Yi Xian. "Ah Di. Heaven and earth." Yi Xian said, "Seniors, I'll be staying here for a period of time. Is there a problem?" Ah Tian shook his head. "No problem. Your master's relative, so you should stay here." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Seniors, this junior has something to ask." Atendo said, "Please speak." Yi Xian said, "Is Ling reincarnated?" Atian shook his head, "Not really. Because if she reincarnated, in theory she can't remember her past life, and it's not like she took over. As for why she became your sister, we don't know either. Only Master knows the reason. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'll ask her when the time comes. Then he looked at the two old men. Can I use the resources here? The two old men were speechless. Yi Xian asked again. You should be able to, right? Atian nodded. Yes. What are you going to use? Yi Xian said solemnly. Swords. I need some good swords. Atian nodded. Wait a moment. Then he turned and left. At this moment, Adi suddenly said, Master has never cared about anyone. You're the first. Yi Xian said, I'm her brother. Adi wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, are you trying to say that I'm too weak to be her brother? Adi glanced at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Obviously it was a tacit agreement. Yi Xian smiled. I'll work hard to become stronger. Adi nodded slightly. Sir, you're a genius. Among the younger generation there aren't many who are stronger than you. With your talent, your future is limitless. As for Yi Xian, the two of them did not have any other thoughts. Because Yi Xian was monstrous enough. Although Yi Xian's current strength was not particularly strong, one should not only look at the present, but also look at the future. At this moment, Atian suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He opened his palm and 3 swords appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the 3 swords and said softly, It's time to increase my realm. With that, he picked up a sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Atian and the old man were speechless. At the Worldwide Academy. After Zhang Wenxiu left the Shura land, she returned to the Worldwide Academy. When she saw Zhang Wenxiu, Lin Xiaoshu and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. Although this woman had a bad temper, the Worldwide Academy could not afford to lose her now. Right now, the Worldwide Academy needed a super strong person to guard it. Lin Xiaoshu looked at Zhang Wenxiu who had returned. Then Yi Xian, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, Scram. Lin Xiaoshu's expression froze. Zhang Wenxiu did not care about the crowd. She walked towards a large hall below. That was where the Worldwide Library was located. Soon, Zhang Wenxiu arrived in front of the Worldwide Library. The person guarding the front of the library was the old man. Seeing Zhang Wenxiu, the old man looked at Zhang Wenxiu. It's you? Zhang Wenxiu's face was expressionless. You're not dead yet. The old man said softly, I can still live for a few more years. Zhang Wenxiu looked behind the old man. Back then, it was this library that caused my academy to fall apart. As she spoke, a wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of her mouth. Teacher, oh teacher, when you were here, all those students were obedient like cats, yet as soon as you vanished, all of them impatiently wanted the treasures you left behind. If you were still here, wouldn't you be very disappointed? In fact, she no longer had any nostalgia for the Worldwide Academy. If this place was not founded by the Prophet, she would have personally destroyed the people of the Worldwide Academy. Back then, the Worldwide Academy could be said to be full of talents. Other than the 6 headmasters, there were 3 grand scholars and 2 great scholars. In addition, there were countless talents in the Worldwide Academy. These people could be said to be the most outstanding people in the 5 dimensions. However, with the departure of the Prophet, most people became greedy. Some people even did not want to look for the Prophet. This was also the reason why she left in the first place. Hearing Zhang Wenxiu's words, the old man said softly, People's hearts, human nature. Zhang Wenxiu said softly, You should have met that person. What do you think? The old man asked, That young man? Zhang Wenxiu nodded. The old man was silent for a moment. Very good. To be able to make Xiao Ta recognize him as his master, he must be extraordinary. At this point, he shook his head slightly and said, Actually, it would have been better to directly accept this person into the academy. Zhang Wenxiu said softly, This person is not fated with the academy. The old man sighed softly. Wenxiu, you've been outside for so many years. Have you found teacher's whereabouts? Zhang Wenxiu shook her head. Not at all. The old man said in a low voice, With teacher's character, he would not disappear for no reason. I think that his disappearance back then might have been due to an unexpected situation. Zhang Wenxiu squinted her eyes. What are you trying to say? The old man shook his head and did not speak. Zhang Wenxiu said softly, With teacher's strength, no one in the 5th dimension could hurt him back then. The old man said in a low voice, Then there is only one possibility. Zhang Wenxiu nodded. Then teacher disappeared on his own. With his personality, he definitely wouldn't leave without giving us an explanation. So, I'm guessing that he probably didn't expect himself to disappear. Speaking to there, she paused for a moment before continuing. Just what was teacher doing to make himself disappear? The old man suddenly said, I wonder if teacher has any news about him. Female teacher. Zhang Wenxiu glanced at the world-dimensional bookstore, then turned around and left. The old man suddenly said, What are your plans? Zhang Wenxiu stopped and said softly, Although I don't want to manage this broken academy, it was left behind by teacher. Before teacher returns I have to look after it for him. The old man asked again, Then Yi Xian, what are you going to do? Zhang Wenxiu was expressionless. This person is quite mysterious. Behind him is not only the mysterious woman in plain dress, but also the Shura Empress. Why do we have to become enemies with him? Are we too full? The old man said, So many people died in the academy. Zhang Wenxiu's eyes turned cold. They died because they were stupid. They deserved it. After saying this, she quickly disappeared into the distance. Chapter 899. Fu Wenzong. Inside the Rune Palace, all the Fu Wenzong powerhouses had gathered. Shen Xinghe's face was gloomy. The faces of all the Fu Wenzong powerhouses in the palace were unsightly. Zhang Wenxiu had appeared. Fu Wenzong was no stranger to this woman. She could be said to be the scariest person in the worldwide academy. This was because the prophet and the female teacher were reasonable, but this woman was not reasonable at all. Moreover, she was extremely powerful. If this woman came to Fu Wenzong would not be able to stop her. At this moment Lu Yong suddenly said, Senior brother, don't worry too much. With that woman's temper, she hasn't come yet. I think she won't come. Qin Xinghe nodded. No matter what, we have to be careful of this person. As he said this he looked at Lu Yong. Is there any news of little Grandmaster? Lu Yong nodded. Little Grandmaster has contacted me. He is safe and sound. Don't worry. Hearing this, Qin Xinghe nodded slightly. That's good. As he said this, he looked into the distance and said softly, I'm afraid the five-dimensional universe will not be peaceful soon. We should not stick to the rules. Junior brother, follow me. As he said this, he turned around and walked into the depths of the palace. Lu Yong was silent for a moment before he followed. Azurahel. At this moment Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged on a stone block. His body exuded a powerful aura. Behind him were Atian and Adi. The two of them were Yi Xian's bodyguards. After about an hour, Yi Xian suddenly picked up a sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Boom. A wave of pure energy spread out from his body. Behind Yi Xian, the two elders looked at each other. They had to admit that they were very curious about Yi Xian's cultivation method. Yi Xian's cultivation method was too unique. Eating swords? They had never seen such a cultivation technique before. Approximately 2 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. A powerful aura swept out from his body like a tidal wave. 2 streams of air were emitted from his body, one yin and one yang. Yin-yang realm. Yi Xian stood up and looked at his hands. Above the yin-yang realm was the life and death realm, and above the life and death realm was the heavenly fate realm. After the heavenly fate realm was karma, and finally reincarnation. To put it simply, his current realm was still on the low side. However, he did not dare to continue. His top priority now was to stabilize his realm. Meanwhile, Atian suddenly said, What cultivation technique is this? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said with a smile, A senior taught me how to use the sword as my dantian. Atian said softly, Very special. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything. The more he read, the more he found the cultivation method the woman in the plain dress had taught him dreadful. After devouring swords and cultivating a sword body, he was now immune to almost all swords. It could be said that even the executing heaven sword couldn't hurt him. With his current strength he could even devour the executing heaven sword. Yi Xian looked into the distance and said softly, When will she come back? Atian said in a deep voice, I don't know. Yi Xian looked at Atian, Senior, what kind of existences are suppressed in the Azura Hell? Atendo said, Evil spirits, vengeful spirits and some special existences. Yi Xian asked again, Is she in danger? Atian said in a deep voice, Master is extremely powerful. Those random things are no match for her. Yi Xian nodded slightly, I hope everything is fine. Atian was about to speak when his expression suddenly changed. Yi Xian and Adi looked at Atian. Atian said in a deep voice, I lost contact with Master. Lost contact? Yi Xian frowned, What do you mean? Atian said in a deep voice, When Master left, she kept in contact with me. But just now, that contact was suddenly cut off. Yi Xian frowned, Did something happen? Atian shook his head, I don't know. Yi Xian said, let's try to contact her. Atian nodded and closed his eyes slowly. After a while, his expression became more and more unsightly. He looked at Yi Xian and shook his head. I can't contact her. Something has happened. Yi Xian didn't hesitate and turned to walk in the direction of the Azura Hell. Atian hurriedly stood in front of Yi Xian. What are you going to do? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I'm going to look for her. Atian shook his head. With your strength, it's too dangerous to go there. Moreover, if anything happens to Master, it's not something you can solve. Bullshit. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, am I very weak? Atian nodded honestly. Yi Xian took a deep breath and said, Senior, I apologize for my tone just now. But I'm still worried, so I'm going there myself. Atian said in a low voice, calm down first. I'll go take a look myself. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Yi Xian was about to speak when Lian Chen spoke abruptly, he's much stronger than you. Let him go take a look first. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he nodded, Senior, be careful. Atian nodded slightly and then he turned around and left. Yi Xian slowly clenched his fists. Actually, he knew that Yi Ling was very strong, but he was still very worried. At the side, Adi glanced at Yi Xian. Actually, you should take care of yourself. Yi Xian fell silent. Adi continued, I have no ill intentions. That Xiao Ta is with you and many people won't give up on you. If it weren't for you, even Master wouldn't have given up on this pagoda. Because there's something that Master wants in the Worldwide Academy. Yi Xian nodded, I know. In the four-dimensional universe, Yi Ling had almost taken the prison pagoda, but in the end Yi Ling had chosen not to do so. After coming to the five-dimensional universe, the prison pagoda had been taken away by someone. He already knew that it was Yi Ling who had taken it, and Yi Ling had returned it to him. At this moment, Adi said, the treasures left behind by the Prophet are something that even the 6 great experts would be tempted by, especially those who are unable to advance any further. The Prophet's study can be said to be their last hope. However, the only way to open the study is with the prison pagoda in your hands. So, those people won't let you go, so you better be mentally prepared. Yi Xian nodded, I know. Adi was about to speak, but at this moment he also frowned. Yi Xian hurriedly said, what's the matter? Adi said in a low voice, I've lost contact with Atian. There's a problem. Yi Xian said in a low voice, something must have happened down there. Adi said, I'll go take a look. Yi Xian shook his head, no, I'll go. Adi looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian said in a low voice, my concealment method is very special. As long as I don't attack others, it's very difficult for others to discover me. Adi wanted to say something but Yi Xian turned around and left. He was very fast and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distance. Adi sighed softly, this guy. He hesitated for a moment but in the end he chose not to follow. After a while Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of hell. Before he entered, Yi Xian felt danger. However, he did not hesitate and directly entered hell. As soon as he entered hell, a cold aura hit him in the face and it was bone-chilling. Not only that, but there were some ferocious-looking ghosts floating around him. These ghosts were staring at him and their gazes made him shudder. Yi Xian was a little afraid, but soon he seemed to think of something and his eyes suddenly lit up. What were these things around him? They were ghosts. What kind of existence were ghosts? They were souls. Why should he be afraid of souls? At this moment, an evil spirit suddenly pounced at him from afar. Yi Xian took out the soul-suppressing sword and the soul-suppressing sword flew out. The evil spirit was instantly absorbed by the soul-suppressing sword, and it did not even have a chance to resist. At this time the evil spirits around him retreated, and their eyes were filled with fear. Obviously they were very afraid of the soul-suppressing sword in Yi Xian's hand. Meanwhile, the corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Originally, coming to this place was a little dangerous, but now it seemed that not only would there be no danger but there might also be a chance. The soul-suppressing sword, this sword could devour souls to evolve. Of course, his focus now was not to devour these evil spirits, but to find Yi Ling. Yi Xian glanced around and the next moment he disappeared. This time he directly escaped into the realm of emptiness. Although he had the soul-suppressing sword, he did not dare to underestimate this place. The moment he disappeared, a divine sense suddenly swept past his position. Yi Xian's expression suddenly became solemn. Someone had discovered him? However, at this time the divine sense disappeared again. Yi Xian looked into the distance and in his line of sight, there was a large number of endless ghosts floating around. Yi Xian frowned. What exactly is this place? Suddenly, a voice came from afar, and the ghosts in the surroundings suddenly turned around and pounced towards the distance. Yi Xian hurriedly flew over, and in next to no time he saw a person, and it was Atian. At this moment, Atian was surrounded by tens of thousands of evil spirits, and the person in the lead was a man in red clothes. This person was a soul body as well, and he held a blood-red sword in his hand, and his aura was extremely strong. At this moment, the man in red clothes suddenly turned around and looked at Yi Xian's position. Yi Xian's face sank. This fellow wouldn't have discovered me, right? At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian knew that the other party had discovered him. Yi Xian stopped concealing himself and walked out directly. As soon as he walked out, countless evil spirits pounced towards him. Yi Xian lit up the soul-suppressing sword, and the evil spirits instantly retreated like a receding tide. Yi Xian looked at the man in red clothes, and the man in red clothes grinned. Another one. Yi Xian walked towards the man in red clothes. What about her? The man in red clothes smiled. Are you talking about the Shura Empress? Yi Xian nodded. The man in red clothes smiled even more brilliantly. I'm telling you seriously, the Emperor of the Dead has awakened. She will die, and she will die miserably, ha. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared he was already in front of the man in red clothes. The man in red clothes raised his sword and stabbed. This sword was incomparably powerful, but Yi Xian did not dodge and let the sword stab into his abdomen. The man in red clothes was stunned. The soul-suppressing sword in Yi Xian's hand was placed in between the man's eyebrows. I'm telling you seriously, you will die, and you will die miserably, very miserably. As soon as he finished speaking he stabbed, then pulled out, then stabbed, pulled out, stabbed, pulled out, stabbed again, and this cycle continued. Chapter 900. In the field, countless wraiths and evil spirits roared, but none dared to attack. They were afraid of Yi Xian's soul-suppressing sword. Just like that, the evil spirit in red was killed by Yi Xian. At the side, Atian looked at Yi Xian shocked. He knew the strength of the man in red. It was the man who held him back just now, but he did not expect Yi Xian to kill him with one strike. What kind of monster was this? Yi Xian looked at Atian. Senior, you go back first. Atian said, let's go back together. Master is so powerful, she will be fine. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm still worried. After that, he turned and looked into the distance. He could not see the end, and in this godforsaken place, evil spirits and evil spirits were everywhere. What kind of place was this? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Tendo said, I'll go with you. Yi Xian shook his head. No need, it's more convenient for me to go alone. Atian wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, don't waste time. After that, he disappeared into the distance. Atian was silent for a moment, then turned and left. He also realized that he could not do anything here. Even if Yi Ling was in danger, he could not help. What could he do if even Yi Ling could not solve the danger? In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. He went into the land of emptiness again. Yi Xian thought, Miss Lian Chen, how did the man in red discover me? After a moment, Lian Chen said, the space you appeared in is a domain. Yi Xian's face darkened. Don't scare me. Lian Chen said, this is a domain, you are in someone else's domain. I advise you to leave while you can. In someone else's domain. Yi Xian looked around. Can you sense Dao Linger's position? Lian Chen said, are you sure you won't leave? Let me tell you, even if she's really in danger, it's not something you can handle. So, I think you should take care of yourself first. Yi Xian said solemnly, after coming to this place, I have a bad feeling. Lian Chen sighed softly. Let me tell you about this place. I might be one of the few people who know the history of this place. In the beginning, this place was just a battlefield. Later on, because more and more people died, the souls of those who died here gathered in this place. As time passed, more and more evil spirits and ghosts appeared here. However, at that time they weren't much of a threat. Until one day a person suddenly appeared here. This person was the dead emperor that the red-clothed man mentioned. This person refined this place into hell, and the one who managed this place in the past was the Azura kingdom. He was also the ancestor of your little sister. When she spoke up to here, she paused for a moment and said, the dead emperor almost turned the entire Azura kingdom into hell. Unfortunately, he failed. Then he was suppressed in this place. The Azura royal family has been trying to kill this dead emperor for countless years, but to no avail. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, is the emperor of the dead very strong? Lian Chen said, very strong. In the past, the Azura lord invited Master to this place, hoping that Master could kill this dead emperor. However, for some unknown reason, Master didn't choose to do so. Yi Xian frowned. Is it because he didn't have the ability to kill it? Lian Qian said, impossible. Master definitely had the ability to kill this dead emperor, but he didn't. There must be some other reason. Also, you have to understand something. Yi Ling is so strong, but he still couldn't destroy this place. Think about it, can this place be simple? Really, this place isn't something you should come to at your current level. Go somewhere else to train. When your level increases, you can come here to try. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I also want to do that, but Ling Er. As he spoke, he looked into the distance and said softly, I'm still worried. Lian Qian asked, what can you do? Yi Xian said softly, I don't want to wait outside and I don't want to regret it even if it means death. As he spoke, he disappeared on the spot. In the prison pagoda, Lian Qian sighed softly. She had to say this Yi Ling was Yi Xian's nemesis. As long as Yi Ling was involved, Yi Xian, who was usually very smart, would turn into an idiot. There was no saving him. Lian Qian shook her head and didn't say anything else. She knew that it was useless no matter what she said. Along the way, Yi Xian was very careful. Along the way he saw countless evil souls. Moreover, the deeper he went, the stronger the aura of these evil souls. In fact, he really wanted to take out the soul-suppressing sword and absorb all these evil souls. If he absorbed all the evil souls here, the soul-suppressing sword would definitely undergo a qualitative transformation. There were simply too many evil souls in this place. The soul-suppressing sword was also a little restless. However, he still didn't dare to do so. This place was not simple. If he did so, he might not even know how he died. Moreover, his goal this time was to find Yi Ling. Thinking of Yi Ling, Yi Xian began to speed up. About an hour later, Yi Xian found a city in the distance. The city was completely black and there were all kinds of evil souls floating around it. And in the sky above the city, Yi Xian saw Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling was floating above the city. Around her floated 4 old men in black robes. The 4 old men held strange red hooks in their hands. And above Yi Ling's head, there was a huge black seal. This seal constantly emitted a black light that enveloped Yi Ling below. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Lian Qian, what is that thing? It looks very powerful. Can you hook it up? Lian Qian was speechless. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly waved her right hand in the distance. A powerful force shook out from her sleeve. This force was like a tidal wave that shook the 4 old men around her. Seeing that Yi Ling suddenly made a move, the 4 old men hurriedly formed a hand seal and began to quickly chant. Soon, the huge black seal above Yi Ling's head suddenly trembled violently. Countless black lights swept down from the sky. These black lights directly drowned Yi Ling's power. Rumble. The entire sky began to tremble violently. The surrounding space violently undulated like a wave due to the 2 powerful forces. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian became nervous. Although he knew that Yi Ling was extremely powerful, he couldn't help but start to worry. In the sky, Yi Ling's face was expressionless. She raised her head to look at the huge black seal and said indifferently, the seal of life and death. You're quite capable. You actually activated this thing. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared in front of Yi Ling. The middle-aged man was a soul body as well. He held a spear in his hand. He looked at Yi Ling and smiled, Shura Empress, you're even more powerful than before. Yi Ling looked at the middle-aged man and ridiculed, Chiyu, you've finally dared to come out after hiding for so many years? The man called Chiyu smiled, Shura Empress, I lured you here today because I wanted to give you a big gift. Ah. Yi Ling slapped out with a backhand palm. A blood-red scythe suddenly flew out from her palm. As soon as the scythe appeared, heaven and earth were directly torn apart. Chiyu's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he used all his strength to stab with the spear in his hand. The howl of a vicious soul suddenly resounded from the tip of the spear. Yi Xian shook his head. This man's spear technique is even worse than Zhang Wenxiu. In the sky, the spear had just come into contact with Yi Ling's scythe, and it was instantly torn apart. The scythe continued forward and slashed towards Chiyu. Chiyu's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly retreated. However, right at this moment, the huge black seal above Yi Ling suddenly trembled violently, and a powerful force directly suppressed Yi Ling's scythe. Yi Ling raised her head to look at the seal of life and death. She opened her palm, and the scythe appeared in her hand. In the next moment, she transformed into a ray of black light that shot into the sky, and she slashed her scythe at the seal of life and death. Rumble. The seal of life and death trembled violently, and then it cracked apart. Yu's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly said, "Attack!" The 4 black-robed old men hurriedly chanted a chant. In next to no time, the entire sky suddenly started to tremble violently, and then strands of mysterious energy swept incessantly towards Yi Ling. In midair, Yi Ling had an emotionless expression on her face as she suddenly stomped her right foot on the ground. Rumble. The space in an area of over 100 kilometers cracked apart, and countless vicious souls exploded apart at this moment. Their souls were obliterated, and the mysterious energy around her vanished without a trace at this moment. Yi Ling looked down, and then the scythe in her hand suddenly flew forward. One of the black-robed old men didn't even have the time to react before his head flew into the air. On the other hand, another old man was just about to flee, but his head had flown into the air without the slightest sign at the instant he fled. In less than a breath of time, all 4 black-robed old men had been killed by Yi Ling. Yi Ling gazed at Yu. She raised her hand and waved it, and then the scythe in her hand transformed into a ray of blood-red light that slashed towards Yu. However, not only did Yu not dodge, he smiled instead. Right when the scythe was around 1.5 m away from Yu, it suddenly stopped moving. In midair, Yi Ling's beautiful brows knit together slightly. Right at this moment, she seemed to have sensed something, and she swiftly turned around to look at Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian was just about to speak when Lian Qian's voice resounded in his mind. "Leave quickly. Don't hesitate." Yi Xian turned around instinctively and fled. However, at the instant that he fled, he sensed a formidable aura appear behind him. This aura wasn't targeted at him, and it was targeted at Yi Ling instead. Yi Xian turned around and glanced towards the distance. In the sky above Yi Ling, a pair of enormous eyes had suddenly appeared there, and they were scarlet red like an ocean of blood. The undead emperor. In midair, Yi Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. "Who unsealed you?" At this moment, a sea of blood suddenly seeped out from the sky, and then it spread towards Yi Ling. P.S. Some readers said that they were going to provide for me. Let me tell you, you're looking down on me. I, Green One, would rather starve to death than bow down to mere monthly votes. Chapter 901. In the distance, Yi Xian did not leave. Instead, he chose to conceal himself. He looked at Yi Ling in the sky, his fists clenched tightly. Within his body, his blood began to tremble. In the sky, Yi Ling looked at the sea of blood, her face expressionless. Her eyes suddenly turned white, and around her, a destructive power began to gather. When the sea of blood reached Yi Ling's head, Yi Ling suddenly clenched her fists. "Destroy." As soon as she finished speaking, a white light suddenly flew out from her eyes. This white light instantly covered the sea of blood. Rumble. The surrounding space began to crumble, as countless evil spirits retreated frantically. Yi Xian also retreated rapidly. After retreating for 1,000 zhang, Yi Xian finally stopped. Yi Xian looked up at the sky, and within the white light, there were sounds of tearing. Yi Xian became nervous. At this time, the white light in the sky suddenly disappeared. When it was all gone, Yi Xian saw Yi Ling. Yi Ling was wielding a blood scythe, looking like a god of death. In front of Yi Ling there was an illusory man. He wore a snow-white robe and held a white jade fan in his hand. He did not look like an undead emperor but more like a scholar. On his shoulder, there was a small beast the size of a palm. It was completely black with a pair of horns on its head, and its eyes were red. The undead emperor looked at Yi Ling and smiled. "You're even more outstanding than your ancestor." Yi Ling looked at the undead emperor. "Who broke the seal for you?" The undead emperor laughed. "Can't I break through it myself?" "No, it can't be considered breaking it now. It's just that there aren't as many restrictions as before." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Ling. "When the seal is truly broken, you won't be able to stop me." Yi Ling suddenly looked around. Soon, she narrowed her eyes and said, "You lured me down here to fight with your doppelganger so that you can use my power to weaken the seal here." The undead emperor smiled and said, "Yes." Yi Ling nodded slightly. "Good plan." The emperor of the dead laughed. "Descendant of the Azura clan, it seems like I will have to settle the score with your ancestors in the past." Yi Ling looked at the undead emperor. "Anytime." The undead emperor laughed as if he had discovered something. He suddenly looked at Yi Xian's position. When he saw Yi Xian, he smiled and said, "I've heard of you." "You've heard of me?" Yi Xian didn't hide anymore. He walked out and looked at the undead emperor. "Am I that famous now?" The undead emperor smiled and said, "I heard that the prophet Xiao Tai is with you." Yi Xian's face sank. So that's what the undead emperor was planning. The undead emperor suddenly smiled and said, "Please take care of it for me for now." When I come out, I will personally take it. As he spoke, his body gradually became illusory. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Why didn't the prophet kill you back then?" The prophet? The undead emperor was slightly startled. He then shook his head and smiled. "That's a good question. The prophet indeed had the strength to kill me back then. He was also the only one who had the strength to completely destroy me. Unfortunately, he didn't do so." Yi Xian asked again, "Why?" The undead emperor smiled and said, "Because everything has a cause. Why did this place turn into hell? Why would there be? Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang." The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind him, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. "What?" At this moment, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral temple. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she ignored her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral temple, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral temple. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the position of crown prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stomped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Puh. Chapter 902. Yi Xian understood when he heard Lian Qian's words. Everyone hoped that Yi Xian would fight to the death against the Worldwide Academy, and it would be best if the Worldwide Academy's trump card was revealed. That way, those people would be able to take advantage of the situation. Everyone was cunning. Yi Xian shook his head. Meanwhile, Lian Qian said, "All of you can't make a move now. They aren't in a hurry and all of you can't either. You have to hold your ground." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand. But there's a problem, and that's the dead emperor down there." Yi Ling suddenly said, "He can't come out for now." Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling. Time. Yi Ling said, "I can sense that the seal down there hasn't dissipated completely, but it can only last for 3 months at most." Yi Xian asked again, "Can you defeat him?" Yi Ling said, "I'll know after I fight him." Yi Xian fell silent. Meanwhile, Yi Ling said softly, "Don't worry too much." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's think of a way together." Yi Ling sized up Yi Xian and said, "You need to improve your strength." Yi Xian said, "I know." He could be said to have reached a bottleneck in improving his strength. Both his sword Dao and his cultivation had reached a bottleneck, and it was extremely difficult to improve further. Meanwhile, Yi Ling suddenly said, "I'm going into closed-door cultivation for some time. Try not to leave this place during this period." Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling. "You're going into closed-door cultivation?" Yi Ling nodded. "Don't leave this place rashly." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "All right." Yi Ling didn't say anything else and he just turned around and left. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Miss Lian Qian, where's your eldest sister?" He remembered that Yan Jia and Ayu had already gone to look for the big sister they spoke of. However, there was no news of her now. Lian Qian said, "I haven't received any news from them either. However, since Big Sis said she wants to see you, she'll definitely come looking for you." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "Is your elder sister strong?" Lian Qian nodded. "Similar to Zhang Wenxiu. Of course, our true strength lies in the gathering of all the Dao laws and cooperating with Xiaota. This is how we were able to escape from the 5th dimension. All the Dao laws were gathered." Yi Xian nodded. "I hope they can find me soon." Lian Qian said in a low voice, "There are 2 things you must do at the moment. The first is to improve your strength and the second is to see if you can contact that woman in a plain dress." A woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian was silent. He also wanted to find the plain-dressed woman. With her around, that undead emperor would be a big brother. However, he didn't know where the woman in the plain dress was. Lian Qian continued, "If you can't contact the woman in the plain dress, then you only have one way to go, and that is to improve your strength. Also, don't forget your talisman Dao. If you can draw a perfect 7-colored talisman, it'll be very terrifying. You should know that in the past, Fu Wenzong and Fu Xiaotian relied on their talismans to look down on the world." Yi Xian said, "Is the 7-colored talisman really that strong?" Lian Qian said, "The 7-colored talisman in your hand isn't a perfect 7-colored talisman. Moreover, you haven't been able to fully display its power. If you can perfectly display its power, you'll definitely be able to rely on it to fight against experts of Lu Shidi's level." Yi Xian thought about it and said, "I'll make a trip back to Fu Wenzong." With that, he turned around and left. In the depths of hell, in the black ancient city, in a black hall, a coffin was placed in the middle of the hall. Inside the coffin was the undead emperor. Not far away from the coffin stood a woman. The woman wore a long red dress, her hair long enough to touch the ground. She had her back to the coffin, her right hand gently stroking her hair. After a while, the undead emperor suddenly said, "The Shura Empress is stronger than the previous Shura country lord." The corner of the woman's mouth curled up into a horrifying smile. "What, are you afraid?" The undead emperor smiled. "Apart from the prophet, when have I ever been afraid of anyone?" "The prophet?" After a moment of silence, the woman smiled and said softly, "The prophet is really an amazing person." The undead emperor said, "He personally suppressed the devouring spirit clan. Don't you hate him?" The woman smiled, "Do you hate him?" The undead emperor was silent for a moment, then said, "No." The woman smiled and asked, "Why?" The undead emperor said softly, "Back then he had the strength to destroy me in this place, but he didn't. Instead he tried his best to help us here. At that time, I also promised him that if he could really help the evil spirits of this place, I would let go of all my hatred and not bring disaster to this world. Unfortunately he left and never returned. Later I found out that he disappeared." After saying that, he paused, then said, "A person as powerful as he is, no one can kill him." The woman smiled and said, "According to our investigation he should not have been killed by someone. He disappeared on his own." The undead emperor said in a deep voice, "Do you know where he is now?" The woman shook her head, "I don't know. As for whether he will appear in the future, no one knows." The undead emperor said, "What do you want?" The woman smiled, "What do you think?" The undead emperor said, "Although the prophet is no longer here, the outside world is not as weak as you think." The woman suddenly counted with her fingers, "Let me count. Shura Empress, female teacher, old tomb keeper, Li Mubai human snow, and the crippled woman who has disappeared for a long time. There should only be these 6 people who can threaten the devouring spirit clan." The undead emperor said, "Why, do you have a way to deal with these 6 people?" The woman smiled, "Slowly we will start with this Shura Empress." After saying that, she walked outside. Behind her, the undead emperor suddenly said, "Be careful of that Yi Xian." Yi Xian. The woman suddenly said, "He is not the one who should be careful, but the swordsman behind him. We still don't know how strong she is." The undead emperor asked, "Why?" The woman in red said, "Because she kills everyone with a single strike." The undead emperor said, "In the 4th dimension?" The woman in red shook her head, "Although it is in the 4th dimension, we cannot underestimate her. My clan values this woman very much. However, she did not come to the 5th dimension and is still wandering in the 4th dimension. Therefore we do not have much conflict with her, and we do not plan to provoke her." After saying that, she looked up at the sky and said softly, "At most 3 months, your seal will be completely erased. That will be the day of your battle with the Shura Empress. Don't worry, our people will help you." The undead emperor smiled, "I can kill her." The woman in red asked, 100% sure? The undead emperor was silent. The woman in red smiled, "We want 100% sure, no accidents can happen." After saying that, she turned and disappeared into the distance. Inside the palace, the coffin began to tremble, and around it, something seemed to be disappearing bit by bit. Fu Wenzong. After Yi Xian returned to Fu Wenzong, he went into seclusion to draw runes. Target, 7-color runes. All the elders of Fu Wenzong and Xin Xinghe surrounded Yi Xian, guiding Yi Xian. Right now Yi Xian was Fu Wenzong's hope. This was recognized by everyone in Fu Wenzong. Drawing a 7-color rune was not easy at all, because one had to control the 7 elements and integrate them into the rune. Among the talismans, this could be said to be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. When the entire rune sect learned that Yi Xian wanted to draw a 7-colored talisman, the entire rune sect began to teach Yi Xian about it. Yi Xian did not start at the beginning, but learned all kinds of knowledge. During the time Yi Xian was learning, the 5th dimension was very peaceful, and the worldwide academy did not come to cause trouble for Fu Wenzong. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. In the 4th dimension. At this moment, inside the main hall of Tianjiang City, Shangguan Xian'er and Jiang Jiu were busy with all kinds of government affairs. However, this time, it was not only the 2 of them, there were also a few women, all of whom were their trusted aides. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared at the entrance of the main hall. As soon as this old man appeared, many experts suddenly appeared around him. At this time, Jiang Jiu suddenly waved his hand, and the northern experts immediately retreated. The old man looked at Jiang Jiu and the women, smiling slightly. "2 young ladies, I am Fu Wenzong Elder Li Qi, under the order of the young master. I am here to take you 2 to the 5th dimension." To the 5th dimension. Hearing this, the 2 women were stunned. At this time, Jiang Jiu suddenly looked at Shangguan Xian'er, smiling. "I said he will not forget us, why are you still worried?" Shangguan Xian'er's small face turned red. "Little Jiu, you understand him." Jiang Jiu shook his head and smiled. "Actually, you know him better than I do, but you are anxious and can't keep your cool." Shangguan Xian'er smiled. "Indeed, I have lost my composure recently." Jiang Jiu looked at Li Qi. "Senior Li, we have to deal with the northern region's matters, it won't take too long, just 3 days, is that okay?" Li Qi smiled, "Of course." Jiang Jiu nodded, looking at Shangguan Xian'er. "Gather all the major forces and elect a new alliance leader." Shangguan Xian'er said in a deep voice, do we want to give up here? Jiang Jiu smiled, it's not giving up, it's just that we have to free up our hands. Moreover, if we continue to manage it like this after a long time, there will be problems. Shangguan Xian'er nodded, that's true, but I am still a bit reluctant to leave this place. Jiang Jiu said, then you will stay here? Shangguan Xian'er hurriedly shook her head, I still want to see the fifth dimension and he sent people to pick us up, there must be something he wants us to do. The two of us are free tools. Jiang Jiu smiled, then we will ask him for some benefits. The corners of Shangguan Xian'er's mouth curled up slightly, all right. In next to no time, the two of them started to deal with the northern region's matters. Many powers in the northern region tried to persuade them to stay, but they only stayed symbolically. Because many people hoped that the two of them would leave, because if the two of them didn't leave, then they wouldn't have a chance to take over. After they finished dealing with the northern region's matters, the two of them followed Li Qi to the fifth dimension. For the sake of ensuring their safety, Fu Wenzong had even sent over 10 experts to escort them in secret. However, right when they had just left the fourth dimension and arrived at the fifth dimension, a woman in a red dress suddenly appeared in front of them. Li Qi's expression changed greatly when he saw this woman. Who are you? The woman in a red dress smiled lightly, and then she glanced at Jiang Jiu and Shangguan Xian'er before she said, I would like to invite the two of you over as guests. I wonder if the two of you can give me some face? Jiang Jiu looked at the woman in a red dress and after a short moment she said in a light voice, all right, but they have to be kept alive. As she spoke, she paused for a moment and said, please let them be kept alive. The corners of the woman in a red dress curled up slightly, no. As she spoke, she was about to attack, but right at this moment, a voice suddenly came from the side, these people, I will protect them. The woman in a red dress turned around and looked over, and there, a woman riding a pig was slowly coming over. P.S. Tonsillitis caused by a cold, sore throat, dizzy head swelling. Yesterday afternoon, my fever reached 40 degrees, really uncomfortable. Everyone please take care of your health. Chapter 903. The girl was riding on a small white pig. The pig was very white and fat and it trembled as it walked. On the girl's shoulder was a large saber, and there was an evil smile on her face. She looked somewhat cynical. Jiang Jiu and Shangguan Xian'er looked at each other, and there was a trace of doubt in their eyes. Obviously they did not know this pig-riding girl. The girl in the red dress sized up the pig-riding girl and said with a smile, how should I address you? The pig-riding girl grinned, you guess? The girl in the red dress smiled, you guess if I guess or not? The pig-riding girl smiled, I guess if you guess or not. After saying that, she suddenly rushed out. The saber arrived. The girl in the red dress stood in the same place and her expression was calm. She opened her palm and a dim light flew out from her palm. Boom. The dim light directly shattered, and the saber fell to the ground, but the girl in the red dress had already appeared several hundred feet away. At this time the pig-riding girl suddenly swung her saber. In the field, a tearing sound suddenly rang out. In the distance, the girl in the red dress put her hands together, and then gently pulled them to both sides. In an instant, a dim light shield appeared in front of her, and at this time the saber arrived. Boom. The dim light shield directly exploded, but the girl in the red dress had already retreated more than 100 feet away. The pig-riding girl waved her right hand, and the large saber flew back into her hand. In the distance, the girl in the red dress stared at her. Who are you? The pig-riding girl grinned, you guess again. The girl in the red dress smiled, it seems that this little four-dimensional universe is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Interesting. After saying that, she had already disappeared. In the same place, Jiang Jiu looked at the pig-riding girl, Senior is? The pig-riding girl smiled, let's go. After saying that, she slowly rode her pig riding away and as she walked she hummed, Big Sister told me to patrol the mountain. In the same place, Jiang Jiu was silent for a moment and said, let's go. Soon the group disappeared at the end of the horizon. Fu Wenzong. During this period of time, Yi Xian had been crazily learning all kinds of knowledge, and Fu Wenzong could be said to have given his all for him. After studying for about a month, Yi Xian finally started writing. In fact, drawing runes, especially 7-colored talismans, required a lot of equipment and tools. However, Yi Xian didn't need to worry about these things, because Fu Wenzong had prepared everything for him. Apart from that, when he was drawing the 7-colored talisman, he had 6 super rune masters by his side to guide him. Of course, whether he could succeed or not depended on himself. They all failed at the very beginning. This was because fusing the 7 different types of energy together was truly too difficult. However, Yi Xian did not give up. About a month later, Yi Xian suddenly left the hall. At this time, Xin Xinghe walked to his side and said with a smile, "Little Grand Master, don't be discouraged." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "I'm not discouraged. It's just that I feel a little restless after so many failures." Xin Xinghe laughed. "You're already very calm. In the past, I also encountered a similar situation. At that time, I was really restless, so I was put in seclusion by my master for a full half a year." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "This 7-colored talisman is really too difficult to draw. I can't make even the slightest mistake." Xin Xinghe smiled. "It's normal. If 7-colored talisman is so easy to draw, I, Fu Wenzong, would have already dominated the 5th dimension." Then he lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "Don't be discouraged, failure isn't scary, what's scary is the fear of failure." Yi Xian smiled. "I'm not afraid of failure." Qingqing Yi Family Ancestral Temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. What? At this time, a timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her 2 small hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, looking somewhat weak, and there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling slightly bowed to the people in the ancestral temple and timidly said, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you waste him for no reason?" The great elder coldly looked at Yi Ling. "This is a family matter, why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral temple. Once again she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the family and his life is uncertain. But the family is using a groundless excuse to remove him from the crown prince position. This is really unfair." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and angrily said, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position, and it's everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 personal guards. From now on, you can be my personal guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Oh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. What? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged, "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded, "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 904. Yi Xian was quite surprised as well. Because he hadn't expected that Li Mubai from Immortal Banished City would actually come to congratulate him. Yi Xian gazed at Shen Xinghe and the latter chuckled, "Don't be surprised, it's just normal." Yi Xian was puzzled, "Why is that?" Shen Xinghe smiled, "Because even the 6 great experts attach importance to a divine talisman master. Even though your current strength isn't sufficient to go against them, they wouldn't dare look down upon you. You'll be able to experience the influence and terrifying strength of a divine talisman master very soon." Lu Yong nodded slightly, "Yes, so long as you're willing, then you'll have countless friends." Yi Xian smiled, "Is it that popular?" Lu Yong smiled, "It is. Especially when you're still so young and your future is limitless. Let's not talk about all of that for now. Let's go meet this ambassador from Immortal Banished City. We can't neglect this place." As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, "All right." As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 of them walked towards Fu Wenzong's guest hall. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the guest hall. Meanwhile, a young man walked over with a smile on his face. The young man's gaze descended onto Yi Xian and he smiled, "I presume your brother Yi." Yi Xian nodded, "I'm Yi Xian. May I know who you are?" The young man smiled, "Li Shijuan." Shen Xinghe's voice suddenly resounded within Yi Xian's mind. The junior city governor of Immortal Banished City, Li Mubai, is his uncle. Yi Xian grinned, "So it's Brother Li, please sit." Li Shijuan smiled, "Brother Yi, you're a straightforward person, so I won't beat around the bush. I've come this time to ask for a favor." "A favor?" Yi Xian smiled, "May I know what it is?" Li Shijuan said, "I want to ask Brother Yi for a perfect 7-colored talisman." Yi Xian picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip without saying anything. Li Shijuan added, "To tell you the truth, Uncle wanted it." Yi Xian smiled. "So it's Senior Li who wants it?" Li Shijuan nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian smiled but said nothing. Li Shijuan smiled and said, "Brother Yi?" Yi Xian suddenly said, "Brother Li, I'm sorry, I'm busy." The smile on Li Shijuan's face gradually vanished. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stood up and said with a smile, "Brother Li, I still have something to do, so forgive me for not accompanying you." With that, he turned around and left. "Brother Yi." Right at this moment, Li Shijuan suddenly smiled and said, "Uncle wants it." Although it was still the same sentence, the meaning was completely different. Yi Xian turned around to look at Li Shijuan and said with a smile, "Brother Li, are you threatening me?" Li Shijuan smiled and said, "Of course not. It's just that, Brother Yi, it's better to have a friend than an enemy. What do you think?" Yi Xian nodded. "What you said makes a lot of sense. But Brother Li, do you think that a 7-colored talisman is very easy to craft?" Li Shijuan was just about to speak when Yi Xian said, "Besides that, Brother Li, you have to understand something. You've been constantly emphasizing that it's what your uncle wants. What? In your opinion, it's a great honor for me, Yi Xian, that your uncle wants me to craft a 7-colored talisman?" Li Shijuan gazed at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Your uncle is an expert of the current age and he's very formidable. However, I, Yi Xian, don't want to curry favor with him." As he spoke, he looked at Lu Yong. "Elder Lu, send this distinguished guest from Immortal Banished City off for me." After saying that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. In fact, he also wanted to befriend a mortal banished city, but Li Mubai didn't have the slightest sincerity. In addition, Li Shijuan's attitude might seem respectful on the surface, but he was very arrogant in his bones. He thought that he was looking for Yi Xian. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The speaker was an old man dressed in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'll risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, Your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in?" Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, Your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pum. Chapter 905. Yi Xian looked up into the distance when he heard that voice. Meanwhile, that voice resounded once more, "Come in." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and then he walked into the city under Li Shijuan's lead. Immortal banished city. Actually, it was an empty city. All along the way besides Li Shijuan, Yi Xian didn't see a single person. Li Shijuan suddenly fell silent all along the way. When Li Shijuan brought Yi Xian to a river, he looked at the small house in the distance. "Brother Yi, uncle is there." Yi Xian nodded slightly. He looked at Li Shijuan and said with a smile, "I was just speaking casually. Don't take it to heart, brother Li." Li Shijuan shook his head. Listening to Yi Xian's words today is better than studying for 10 years. "Brother Yi, thank you." Yi Xian smiled slightly and didn't say anything else. He walked towards the small house in the distance. Li Shijuan was silent on the spot. All these years, no matter where he went, people would be respectful to him because his uncle was Li Mubai, one of the 6 extraordinary experts in the world. Because of that, no one dared to disrespect him. All these years he treated all of that as normal and he was even very proud of it. But when he heard what Yi Xian said just now, he suddenly realized what right he had to be proud of. Others respected him because of his uncle, not because he was Li Shijuan. At this moment he suddenly understood his uncle's attitude towards him all these years. It was disappointment. Over the years, his uncle had become more and more disappointed in him. He never knew the reason, but he understood at this moment. Li Shijuan smiled slightly when he thought up to this point. He looked at Yi Xian's figure in the distance. "Brother Yi, thank you." Yi Xian waved his hand. "It's nothing." Li Shijuan smiled, turned around and left. At this moment Yi Xian had already walked to the front of the small house. At this moment the door of the small house suddenly opened, and a middle-aged man walked out. The middle-aged man wore a simple white robe and held an ancient book in his hand, and he seemed like a scholar. "Li Mubai." Yi Xian cupped his fists towards Li Mubai. "Senior Li." Li Mubai smiled, "I have something to ask of you. I should be going to Fu Wenzong, but for some reason I don't want to leave this place, so I can only ask my nephew to invite you." Yi Xian smiled and said, "May I know why Senior is looking for this junior?" Li Mubai said, "I hope you can draw a 7-colored talisman for me." Yi Xian asked, "What type of 7-colored talisman?" Li Mubai said, "Soul protecting talisman." Yi Xian frowned, "Soul protection charm?" Li Mubai nodded, "A talisman specially used to protect the soul." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian nodded. "All right." Li Mubai smiled and said, "Aren't you going to ask about the reward?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Since Senior asked, then I'll be straightforward. I want Senior to owe me a favor, and when I'm in trouble one day, I'll look for Senior." Li Mubai shook his head and smiled, "You're really straightforward. However, I like your character. You don't play games and speak your mind." Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, "Senior, then this junior will draw it here. Is that all right?" Li Mubai nodded, "All right. No one will disturb you. If you need anything you can tell me." Yi Xian smiled and said, "As long as no one disturbs me." Li Mubai smiled slightly, "No one will disturb you." Yi Xian nodded. He directly took out a table and placed it by the river, and then he started to draw. A talisman to protect the soul. If it was any other talisman, then he really wouldn't have much confidence. For example, if he wanted to draw a fire-type talisman, then he must be proficient in the fire element. But now he was only proficient in space and the soul. Yi Xian started to draw. Even though he'd succeeded once, he still didn't dare be careless and was still careful. Because he couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake when drawing a 7-colored talisman. Just like that, around 6 hours later, 7 rays of light suddenly shot into the sky in front of Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Li Mubai appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a 7-colored talisman appeared in front of Li Mubai. Li Mubai gazed at the talisman in his hand and nodded slightly, "Thank you." Yi Xian smiled, "Senior, the talisman has been drawn, so I'll be taking my leave." As soon as he finished speaking, he cupped his fists and intended to leave. Meanwhile, Li Mubai suddenly said, "Wait." Yi Xian turned around to look at Li Mubai. "Senior?" Li Mubai smiled, "I can't keep you busy." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a fist-sized violet seal appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Senior, what's this?" Li Mubai said, "The Void Spirit Seal contains Void Spirit energy. If you activate this seal, you can use it to forcefully improve your cultivation." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he was slightly excited. "That's a great treasure. I've repaired the book world. In the future, I can use the book world to suppress the cultivation of others, and then use the Void Spirit Seal to improve my cultivation. That's simply too awesome." Meanwhile, Li Mubai said, "However, this is an external object in the end. So, there's still a gap between your cultivation and that of a true expert. Moreover, it consumes a lot of energy, so you have to be careful when using it." Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." Meanwhile, Li Mubai said, "Your 7-colored talisman is much more precious than mine, so I owe you a favor. However, I can't leave the city. Besides that, I won't refuse anything within my ability." Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded, "Thank you." Li Mubai smiled lightly, "There's one more thing that might be related to you." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What is it?" Li Mubai looked at Yi Xian. "It's about the Shura Hell. As far as I know, your relationship with the Shura Empress isn't simple." Yi Xian smiled, "I'm her brother." Li Mubai was slightly startled, and then he shook his head and smiled, "Interesting." Yi Xian said, "Senior, you don't believe me?" Li Mubai shook his head, "I believe you." Then he looked at Yi Xian. "That day I felt the aura of the Emperor of the Dead. I think his seal is about to be removed. And it's absolutely impossible for him to remove the seal himself. So, if I'm not wrong, someone is helping him in the dark." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Senior, you mean someone is secretly planning all of this?" Li Mubai nodded, "It should be. Moreover, it's not a small force. And once the Emperor of the Dead comes out, he will definitely fight with the Shura Empress. The Shura Empress is very powerful. Even the Emperor of the Dead will find it hard to kill her. However, if someone else intervenes, it'll be hard to predict." Yi Xian was silent. Actually, he had thought of this problem before. If Yi Ling and the Emperor of the Dead fought one-on-one, he definitely wouldn't lose. But what if someone else helped the Emperor of the Dead? At this time, Li Mubai said, "Also, that Xiaota on you, that thing is the key to the Universal Library. There are many people who covet it, but many are watching in the dark. You have to be careful." Yi Xian nodded, "Thank you for your reminder, Senior." Li Mubai smiled, "Take care." Then he turned around and left. In the same place, Yi Xian was silent for a moment before disappearing at the end of the horizon. In front of a faraway house, Li Mubai looked at the sword light in the horizon and said softly, "I'm afraid this world won't be so peaceful anymore." After Yi Xian left the banished immortal city, he didn't return to Fu Wenzhong. Instead, he went to the Worldwide Academy. Seeing Yi Xian's arrival, countless experts from the Worldwide Academy immediately surrounded him. At this time, Lin Xiaoshu appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and asked, "What are you doing here?" Yi Xian said, "I want to see Zhang Wenxiu." Lin Xiaoshu frowned and was about to speak when a voice came from the academy below. "Let him come." Lin Xiaoshu glanced at Yi Xian and waved his hand. The surrounding experts from the academy immediately dispersed. Lin Xiaoshu looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak. However, Yi Xian didn't even pay attention to him and disappeared on the spot. Lin Xiaoshu turned around and looked down with a calm expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Down below, Yi Xian arrived at a courtyard and Zhang Wenxiu was sweeping it. Yi Xian was stunned by this scene. She's sweeping? Meanwhile, Zhang Wenxiu tossed the broom in her hand aside, and then she waved her fair hand. The dust on the ground vanished without a trace. Yi Xian was speechless. Zhang Wenxiu glanced at Yi Xian and said, "I heard you've become a divine talisman master?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Zhang Wenxiu spoke indifferently, "Looks like you're not completely useless after all." Yi Xian was speechless. Why is she so vicious? Can't she speak properly? Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, "Speak. What do you want?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Azura Hell." Zhang Wenxiu waved her hand, "No way." Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, "What do you mean?" Zhang Wenxiu spoke indifferently, "You want me to help the Shura Empress deal with the Emperor of the Dead?" Yi Xian nodded, "That's what I'm thinking." Zhang Wenxiu sneered, "I promised you that I'd help you twice, but I didn't say that I'd risk my life for you." Yi Xian asked, "You're afraid of the Emperor of the Dead?" Zhang Wenxiu spoke indifferently, Don't try to provoke me. I have no enmity with him, so why should I stop him from coming out? Moreover, the Emperor of the Dead didn't do anything wrong. The Shura kingdom is in the wrong. They blindly practiced evil techniques. What an idiot. Yi Xian spoke in a serious tone. Miss Wenxiu, if the Emperor of the Dead comes out, he'll slaughter all living beings. You, Zhang Wenxiu retorted, what does that have to do with me? Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, what if he attacks the Worldwide Academy? Zhang Wenxiu was expressionless. As long as his head isn't caught in a door, he won't do that. Other than you, Yi Xian, no other idiot has dared to touch the Worldwide Academy. I should be more worried about you. Yi Xian, Zhang Wenxiu spoke again, this is the matter of the Azura Hell. I won't interfere. Don't spout nonsense. Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll help you open the Worldwide Library. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian, but didn't say anything. Chapter 906. Zhang Wenxiu sat in front of Yi Xian. She crossed her legs and said with a smile, help me open the world-dimensional bookstore? Yi Xian nodded. How about it in exchange? Zhang Wenxiu shook her head and smiled. Yi Xian, Yi Xian, it seems that I overestimated you. Yi Xian frowned. Soon, he seemed to have thought of something and said in a low voice, you guys don't dare to open the bookstore. At this moment, he understood that if the headmaster and this Zhang Wenxiu made a move, Xiaota wouldn't have been able to escape. And why didn't the two of them make a move to stop the World Prison Pagoda? Because they didn't dare. The World Dimensional Bookstore was too tempting. Once the Worldwide Academy opened, it would become the target of everyone. Without the profit, it would be difficult for a female headmaster to shake the entire fifth dimension. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, if that woman led the academy in the past, she could have defended the World Dimensional Bookstore. However, after teacher left, that woman wasn't interested in anything. Moreover, the biggest contradiction was that the academy wanted to occupy this bookstore. After teacher left, it was no longer the academy that we were familiar with. Saying this, she shook her head. I have already told teacher that his method wouldn't work. Yi Xian suddenly said, it's not that it wouldn't work, it's that he disappeared. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly, I believe that if he was still here, the world would become a better place, right? Zhang Wenxiu said, he can't change people's hearts. Yi Xian said, but he can change people's hearts. Miss Zhang, tell me, are there more good people or bad people in the academy? Zhang Wenxiu was silent. In the past, many people coveted the Prophet's World Dimensional Bookstore, but there were also many people who protected it. Yi Xian continued, he didn't do anything wrong. The mistake was that he disappeared. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. What? Are you here to talk about life and reason with me? Yi Xian shook his head. Sorry for disturbing you. With that, he turned around and left. The main reason he came to this place was to hope that Zhang Wenxiu could lend a hand. If this woman was willing to help, Yi Ling's side would have a higher chance of winning. Unfortunately, he had miscalculated. The Worldwide Academy didn't want to open the Worldwide Bookstore at all. Once the Worldwide Academy opens the Worldwide Bookroom, with the current strength of the Worldwide Academy, it would be impossible to protect it. Setting oneself on fire. Zhang Wenxiu was very insightful. Right at this moment, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, how about we make a deal? Yi Xian stopped and looked at Zhang Wenxiu. The latter smiled and said, I can help Shura Empress once, but I won't risk my life. If I really can't resist, I will leave. Yi Xian said, what do I have to pay? Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. Draw a 7-colored talisman for me. Drawing talisman again. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Wenxiu, with your strength, do you need this kind of 7-colored talisman? Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, that's because with your current strength, you can't fully display the power of the 7-colored talisman. If there's a chance, I will show you. Yi Xian smiled. What kind of 7-colored talisman do you need? Zhang Wenxiu pointed with his finger and a golden ancient book landed in front of Yi Xian. Open it and turn to the last page. Yi Xian opened the golden ancient book and turned to the last page. On the last page there were 2 big words, critical realm. Yi Xian was confused. What talisman is this? Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, a type of talisman of strength, it can break through dimensional space. Yi Xian said, dimensional space? Zhang Wenxiu nodded. Yi Xian asked again, double-dimensional space? Zhang Wenxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. It's triple-dimensional space. Yi Xian was shocked. Is that scary? Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, give it to me. That's how scary it is. If it's on you, it's just an ordinary talisman. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time Zhang Wenxiu said, there's a drawing method in it. Just follow it. What do you think? Yi Xian nodded. Sure. Having said that, he brought out a wooden table, took out some tools and started drawing. He was not particularly familiar with this kind of breaking realm power. Fortunately, the golden ancient book had detailed the drawing method of this talisman. He just had to follow it. Not far away, Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian calmly. Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Zhang Wenxiu. Miss Zhang, if my performance is too monstrous, will you do what Qin Tian did and get rid of me? Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, that's useless. Yi Xian gave Zhang Wenxiu a thumbs up. Miss Wenxiu, I admire you. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and draw. Yi Xian smiled and started drawing the breaking realm talisman. During the drawing process, Yi Xian's expression became serious. The power of this critical talisman was beyond his expectations. Good stuff. Yi Xian was excited. Although he was drawing it for Zhang Wenxiu, he had already memorized the drawing method. In the future, as long as he had enough secret crystals, he could draw as many talismans as he wanted. About 4 hours later, 7 colorful light beams suddenly shot up from the academy. At this time, Zhang Wenxiu appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed with his finger and the 7-colored critical talisman landed in front of Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu looked at the talisman in her hand and nodded slightly. Not bad. Then she looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. If anything happens in the future, I'll lend a hand. Yi Xian nodded and passed the golden ancient book to Zhang Wenxiu. Miss Wenxiu, I'm returning this to you. Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, you've already memorized it. What's the use of me keeping it? Yi Xian immediately kept the golden ancient book and gave a fist salute. Thank you, Miss Wenxiu. Miss Wenxiu, will meet again. After that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. His speed was unbelievably fast. At this time Lin Xiaoshu appeared. He looked at Zhang Wenxiu. What? Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lin Xiaoshu. What do you think? Lin Xiaoshu looked at Zhang Wenxiu. With your strength you can definitely kill him. Zhang Wenxiu sneered. And then? Then get the World Prison Pagoda and open the Universal Library? Lin Xiaoshu said solemnly, can't I? Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said angrily, are you a pig with a human head? Do you think the Tomb Keeper, the crippled girl and human world Shui are dead people? Lin Xiaoshu said solemnly, other than Shura Empress they haven't made any moves. Zhang Wenxiu sneered. That's because they're waiting to see who makes the first move. If we make the first move, they definitely won't sit and watch us open the Universal Library. Lin Xiaoshu frowned. What? Zhang Wenxiu said coldly, because the prophet isn't here anymore. These old farts have reached their limits. If they want to advance again, they can only do it with the Academy's library. However, they're afraid. Firstly, they're afraid of Headmaster. Secondly, they're afraid of the great array of the Academy. Thirdly, they're afraid that they'll become someone else's dowry. If we take the library by force, can you guarantee that these people won't target us? Lin Xiaoshu said solemnly, that thing belongs to the Academy. Zhang Wenxiu looked straight at Lin Xiaoshu. That thing doesn't belong to the Academy. It belongs to Teacher. Since it recognized Yi Xian as its master, it belongs to Yi Xian. Lin Xiaoshu frowned. Wenxiu, why do you keep helping outsiders? Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, strictly speaking he's not an outsider. He's recognized by Xiao Ta as his master. To some extent he's a part of the Academy. Also, I can kill him, but after I kill him, can you bear the consequences? And that Shura Empress, she's obviously protecting him. If we kill him, can you guarantee that Shura Empress won't come to the Academy to fight us? Are you going to stop her? Lin Xiaoshu said solemnly, we have the Great Array. Idiot. Zhang Wenxiu suddenly shouted angrily. With the Great Array, no one will dare to touch the Academy. Without the Great Array, the Worldwide Academy won't even last a month. As she said this, she looked coldly at Lin Xiaoshu. Use your pig brain and think about it. Don't just study every day. Don't think about revenge every day. Lin Xiaoshu said in a low voice, he killed many people from the Academy. This matter? Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lin Xiaoshu. In Teacher's words, everything has a cause and effect. Why did this happen? It's because you killed him. This is because you started the cause. If it's beneficial to you, you reason with others, but if it's not beneficial to you, you fight with your fists? Have all the books you've read all these years gone to waste? Lin Xiaoshu's face darkened. Zhang Wenxiu didn't give up. He pointed at Lin Xiaoshu angrily. Lin Xiaoshu, don't think I don't know you. You've reached a bottleneck these years and wanted to use that study to break through. But let me tell you, this matter concerns the survival of the worldwide academy. If you dare to cause trouble for Yi Xian again, I'll kill you first. Remember, teacher is no longer here. The worldwide academy is no longer the invincible academy it used to be. If you don't know how to keep a low profile and bide your time, you'll all die. Lin Xiaoshu was silent. Then Zhang Wenxiu suddenly slapped him. Boom. Lin Xiaoshu was sent flying out of the courtyard. As soon as he stopped, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly appeared in front of him. She grasped Lin Xiaoshu's throat. If it wasn't for teacher, I'd kill you. I'm warning you one last time. Yi Xian is now a jinx. Don't touch him. If you dare to touch him, I'll kill you. With that, she waved her right hand and threw Lin Xiaoshu away. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lin Xiaoshu coldly. Get down. Lin Xiaoshu didn't say anything. He turned and left. Then an old man appeared in front of Zhang Wenxiu. The old man sighed. Wenxiu, you're doing it for his own good, but the way you said it, Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, if he wasn't teacher's student, I'd kill him. How short-sighted. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, would he feel resentment in his heart? Zhang Wenxiu was expressionless. He wouldn't dare. Then she looked at the old man. Where is Qin Tian now? The old man said, he went to the fourth dimension. I think he's looking for the woman in the plain dress behind Yi Xian. Don't worry. We've been monitoring his whereabouts. Zhang Wenxiu nodded. If he dares to do anything, kill him. The old man looked at Zhang Wenxiu and said softly, Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, Yi Xian is not lucky to be alive until now. Our academy should have just watched from the sidelines instead of targeting him and being the first bird to stand out. Now we only have a single path, and that is to wait and see what happens. Then she looked up at the sky and said softly, our academy no longer has the power to look down on the heroes of the past. We have to change our mentality. If we're blindly arrogant, we'll be destroyed. P.S. I'm attending Zongheng's annual meeting today. All the gods of Zongheng are here. Who do you want me to do? As long as you give me a monthly ticket, I'm willing to do it. Also, I'm going to print some Sword Realm and Sword Venerables peripherals. If you follow my public account, you'll have a chance to get them for free. Remember, there's no charge for them. There are signed physical books, engraved lighters, figurines, and mysterious prizes. If you want them, add my public account, Green Phoenix Peak. Just follow me. Chapter 907. After leaving the Worldwide Academy, Yi Xian did not return to Fu Wen Zone. Instead, he went to the Azura Hell. It was a pity that Yi Ling was still in closed-door cultivation. Yi Xian came to a spacious hall. He sat cross-legged on the floor, took out a talisman paper and a brush and started drawing. A critical talisman. He was not drawing it for himself but for Yi Ling. In Yi Ling's hands, this talisman would be extremely destructive. At this moment, Lian Qian appeared beside Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian and asked, do you really want to intervene? Yi Xian put down the brush in his hand and smiled. What's wrong? Lian Qian shook her head. This is not something you can intervene in. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Qian continued, I think this is not a simple matter. First, the Emperor of the Dead can't break the seal by himself. This means that someone is helping him, and this person is not an ordinary person. She looked at Yi Xian and said, if Yi Ling can't handle it, it's useless for you to intervene. Yi Xian nodded. I know, but I still have to do my best. Lian Qian sighed and did not say anything else. She knew that as long as Yi Ling was involved, Yi Xian would never give up, even if he knew he would die. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, you reminded me. Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian and asked, what do you mean? Yi Xian said softly, I have to find more helpers. Lian Qian nodded slightly. You are a divine talisman master. If you are willing to draw 7-colored talismans for others, there should be strong people willing to help you. However, it's useless to find ordinary people. You can only find the other few of the 6 powerhouses. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, among the 6 powerhouses, Li Mubai can't leave the city, so he has to give up. Then the only ones left are the female headmaster, Human Snow, the crippled lady, and the tomb keeper. As he spoke, he looked at Lian Qian and asked, out of these 4, which one is easier to talk to? Lian Qian said, none of them are easy to talk to. Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian suddenly said, let's look for that Human Snow. Yi Xian asked, why? Lian Qian said, back then I followed my master and saw this person. I've met her a few times. She might be of some use. Yi Xian nodded, Alright, then let's go find this human world snow. After saying that, he began to focus on drawing the critical rune. About 6 hours later, he finished drawing the critical symbol and handed it over to Tian. Because Yi Ling was still in seclusion, he had no way to see Yi Ling. After giving the talisman to Tian, Yi Xian set off for the sky land. Because the human snow was in the firmament. Amidst the clouds, Yi Xian flew on his sword. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Lian Chen, among these 6 experts, who is stronger? After a moment of silence, Lian Chen said, In the 5th dimension, under my master there were these 6 experts. As for who is stronger, I don't know because they haven't fought each other. However, all 6 of them can easily enter the 3-dimensional space. Yi Xian asked, Back then the prophet could enter the 4-dimensional space. Lian Chen said, I don't know. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, How can you not know? Lian Chen said, Back then master's true strength was a mystery because he rarely fought. Even when he didn't use his full strength. Therefore we don't know how strong he was. Just like the woman behind you, do you know how strong this person is? Yi Xian shook his head. He really didn't know how strong the woman in the plain dress was because she killed everyone with 1 sword. She had never used 2 swords. Lian Chen said again, Actually, this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. In fact, if the woman in the plain dress and master meet, it will definitely be very interesting. Yi Xian said with a smile, Let them fight. Lian Chen said, It's not impossible. If they fight, it will definitely be very interesting. Yi Xian laughed. In Miss Lian Chen's opinion, the woman in the plain dress is stronger than the 6 experts? Lian Chen said softly, Definitely stronger. Also, let me tell you, other than master, the strongest were not the 6 experts but Xiao Ta and us sisters. Yi Xian was a little surprised. Xiao Ta added you guys? Lian Chen said, Yes, with the 9 Dao laws gathered plus Xiao Ta at his peak, the 6 experts had to step aside. The reason why Xiao Ta could escape back then, other than the fact that Headmaster and Zhang Wenxiu went easy on him, the real reason was that the Dao laws and Xiao Ta were strong enough so no one dared to fight with us. Unfortunately, after Xiao Ta came to the 4-dimensional universe, he was too arrogant. Sigh, this idiot. In Yi Xian's body, the prison pagoda trembled slightly, as if it was expressing something. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had to say, if Xiao Ta had kept a low profile back then, he wouldn't have been almost destroyed. Lian Chen said again, Yanjia and the rest are already looking for the other Dao laws. When the time comes they will look for you. At that time, you have to think of a way to restore Xiao Ta's spiritual intelligence. When that time comes, even if you face the 6 experts, you will still be able to fight. Yi Xian said in a low voice, After Xiao Ta recovers his spiritual intelligence, will he kill me first? Lian Chen said, Probably not. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. What? Previously, you told me that we can't let Xiao Ta recover his spiritual intelligence. Lian Chen said, Firstly, this pagoda seems to be very close to you and this closeness is a little abnormal. Secondly, it doesn't dare to do anything to you because of the woman in the plain dress behind you. With her around, even if it was given 100 guts, it still wouldn't dare to do anything to you. The woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian said softly, I don't know where she is now. Is she still in the 4-dimensional universe, or has she already come to the 5-dimensional universe? Lian Chen said, She seems to be doing something. No matter what, you still have to rely on yourself. Yi Xian nodded. Indeed, people could only rely on themselves. Lian Chen continued, The current 5-dimensional universe is no longer the one I knew. After the master disappeared, everyone coveted the bookstore he left behind. Now, no one has made a move on you because they are waiting for you to fight against the Worldwide Academy. Therefore, your situation is more serious than Yi Ling's. As long as she doesn't want to die and doesn't defend that place, no one can kill her. But you are different. Once those people make a move on you, you basically have no way to survive. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Do the 6 powerhouses also want that bookstore? Lian Xian said, First, they definitely want it. If it weren't for you, Yi Ling wouldn't have returned Xiao Ta to you. In fact, she might have even killed you to silence you. Also, you have to remember that this world doesn't only have the 6 powerhouses. There are also some very low-key aristocratic families and sects, especially some reclusive aristocratic families and some powerful sections. These forces aren't something you can contend against alone. Therefore, since you have this pagoda, you are destined to have many, many enemies. Yi Xian nodded slightly. I understand. Lian Chen said, They are all waiting now. This is an opportunity for you, an opportunity to become stronger. Yi Xian nodded. In fact, when he was in the four-dimensional universe he was already mentally prepared. With Xiaota around he could forget about living a peaceful life. At this moment, Lian Qian suddenly said, "We're here." Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and looked up into the distance. In his line of sight, there was a door floating in the clouds. The door was hundreds of feet tall and stood tall in the clouds, exuding an ancient aura. Yi Xian said softly, "This is the firmament land?" Lian Qian said, "Yes." "This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page." Yi Xian nodded slightly and flew over. As soon as he arrived in front of the door, an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man looked at Yi Xian with an unfriendly expression. "Who are you?" Yi Xian cupped his fists. "I'm Fu Wenzong Yi Xian. I'm here to see Senior Human Shui." "Yi Xian." The old man sized up Yi Xian. "You're Yi Xian, Divine Talisman Master?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's me." Hearing this, the old man's expression softened. "So it's Divine Talisman Master Yi. Divine Talisman Master Yi, my lady isn't in the firmament land." Although Yi Xian was a junior in front of him, he didn't dare to be careless because Yi Xian was a Divine Talisman Master. A Divine Talisman Master's status was just a little lower than the 6 powerhouses. Hearing the old man's words, Yi Xian frowned. "She's not in the firmament land?" The old man nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "Then where is she?" The old man shook his head. "My lady hasn't returned for many years. And she hasn't contacted us, so we don't know where she is." Yi Xian was silent. At this moment the old man said, "May I know why Divine Talisman Master Yi is looking for my lady?" Yi Xian smiled. "I just want to pay a visit." The old man nodded and smiled. "How about this? If my lady comes back, I'll send someone to Fu Wenzong to inform Divine Talisman Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "Then it'll be troublesome." The old man smiled. "It's a small matter." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. When Senior Shui comes back, I'll pay a visit." With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the horizon. The old man looked at the sword light in the distance and said softly, "To be a Divine Talisman Master at such a young age, he really is a genius." In the distant horizon, Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Are we going to look for the master of the 5th dimension, the crippled girl?" Lian Qian said, "I'm afraid you won't be able to find her." Yi Xian was about to speak when the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Soon his expression changed. In the next moment he disappeared into the horizon. Something happened in the Azura Hell. Azura Hell. On this day in the Azura Hell, countless vengeful spirits and ghosts roared. A powerful aura surged out like a volcanic eruption. All the powerhouses in the Azura Hell were shocked. At the entrance of the Azura Hell, Atian and Adi had grave expressions. The power coming from the Azura Hell was too strong. At this moment the two suddenly turned around. Not far away a little girl slowly walked over. Was Yi Ling. Atian hurriedly walked in front of Yi Ling and said in a low voice, "Master, I'm afraid the Emperor of the Dead is about to completely break the seal." Yi Ling looked at the entrance of the Azura Hell. "Everyone retreat." Atian looked at Yi Ling. Yi Ling said softly, "Don't talk nonsense, make everyone retreat." Atian said in a low voice, "Master, us brothers should stay." Yi Ling looked at Atian. "All of you leave immediately." Atian wanted to say something, but Yi Ling's expression suddenly turned cold. "Don't make me angry." Atian hesitated and wanted to say something, but Yi Ling said softly, "I'm alone, I have no scruples, I'm more confident." Hearing this, Atian was silent for a moment, then nodded. "All right." With that, he and Adi withdrew all the powerhouses in the Azura Hell. At the entrance of the Azura Hell, Yi Ling looked at the little wooden doll in her hand. After a long time she put it away and jumped into the Azura Hell. End of this chapter. Chapter 908. As soon as Yi Ling entered Hell, countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits charged at her. Yi Ling was expressionless. She flicked her sleeves. Boom. Before the vengeful spirits and evil spirits could get close to her, they exploded and turned into nothingness. The remaining vengeful spirits and evil spirits quickly retreated and did not dare to get close. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the black ancient city at the end of his vision, a powerful aura rippled out like water. The aura grew stronger and stronger with each wave. It was extremely terrifying. At that moment, an explosion suddenly sounded in the black ancient city. Then a middle-aged man slowly floated up from the city. Countless vengeful spirits circled around the man. This man was the Emperor of the Dead. Yiling looked at the Emperor of the Dead calmly. In the distance, the Emperor of the Dead took a deep breath greedily and an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. The taste of freedom. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Yiling and smiled. I heard that you are the last emperor in the human world? Yiling was expressionless. You talk a lot of nonsense. As soon as she spoke, she opened her palm and a blood-red sickle suddenly appeared in her hand. In the next moment she disappeared from the scene. In the gray sky, a blood-red light flashed. Wherever the blood-red light passed, the space exploded inch by inch and was annihilated. In the end, it turned into nothingness and disappeared completely. It was extremely terrifying. In the distance, the corners of the undead emperor's mouth lifted slightly. Come, let me see if you, the great emperor, or I, the great emperor, is stronger. As he spoke, he faced his palm down and raised it gently. Yellow spring ashes. As soon as he finished speaking, a dark green flame poured down from the sky. Everywhere the flame passed, space was instantly incinerated into ashes. Below, Yiling suddenly stopped. She raised her head and looked at the dark green flame. She opened her palm and the blood-red sickle in her hand shot into the sky with a blood-red radiance. It slashed at the flame. Boom. The entire hell suddenly shook. Countless flames and blood-red radiance rippled in all directions. In an instant, the vengeful spirits and evil spirits in the scene fled in all directions, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Below, the undead emperor looked at Yiling. Your ancestors are all inferior to you. Yiling was expressionless. She scanned the surroundings. What? Are they not coming out? The undead emperor looked straight at Yiling. I alone am enough to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, a black spear suddenly appeared in his hand. In the next moment he transformed into a ray of black light that shot out explosively. Countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits were attached to the tip of the spear in his hand. These spirits and evil spirits had hideous expressions and were howling madly. In the distance, a wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Yiling's mouth. You? As soon as she finished speaking, she slashed forward with the blood-red sickle in her hand. A sharp sound of tearing resounded abruptly. Rumble. A shocking explosion suddenly resounded, and the entire hell trembled violently as if an earthquake was occurring. It was extremely shocking. At this moment, the undead emperor had already returned to his original position, while Yiling had not taken a single step back. The undead emperor gazed at Yiling, and his expression became even more solemn. In the distance, Yiling suddenly closed her eyes slowly, and then she vanished into thin air. Seeing this, the undead emperor narrowed his eyes. Triple-dimensional space. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished as well. As soon as the two of them vanished, the entire hell suddenly quieted down. Just like that, after an unknown period of time, the space that the two of them were in suddenly split open. Then, the two of them once again appeared in this hell. At this moment, the undead emperor's face was slightly pale. At the same time, his expression was even more solemn than before. In the distance, Yiling suddenly grasped the blood-red sickle in her hand with both hands. She slowly raised the sickle, and when the sickle was above her head, she suddenly roared, "Endless slash!" As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished into thin air. In the face of this sickle, the space here was even more fragile than a piece of paper. In the distance, the undead emperor's expression changed. He did not dare to be careless, and the spear in his right hand stabbed forward. 100 ghosts attack. As the spear stabbed forward, countless vengeful spirits and evil ghosts rushed out from the spear. However, as soon as these spirits and evil ghosts got close to Yiling's sickle, they instantly turned into ashes. The sickle arrived. Boom. The spear in the undead emperor's hand trembled violently, and it directly cracked, while he instantly retreated. However, at this moment Yiling's sickle once again slashed at his spear. Boom. The spear instantly exploded, but this was not the end. Before the first slash ended, another slash arrived and it was continuous. In the battlefield, the undead emperor frantically retreated. In the process of retreating, a pitch-black light screen had unknowingly appeared around him, and it was this light screen that had barely blocked Yiling's sickle. However, at this moment, the light screen had already cracked into the shape of a spider's web. At this moment, as Yiling slashed down with her sickle, the undead emperor's black light screen instantly exploded, and Yiling's sickle pierced straight through, heading straight for the undead emperor's head. At this moment, the undead emperor suddenly raised both his hands. Dark extermination. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of black light suddenly engulfed him and Yiling. After 3 breaths, the ray of black light suddenly disappeared. At this moment, Yi Ling had already retreated hundreds of feet away, and a faint black aura appeared on the sickle in her hand. This black aura was slowly corroding the sickle. In the distance, the undead emperor suddenly took a step forward, and a spirit lamp suddenly flew out from between his eyebrows. He pointed at Yi Ling from afar. "Spirit lamp burns the soul." As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit lamp turned into a ray of green light and appeared above Yi Ling's head. In the next moment, a column of eerie white flames poured down. If one was burned by this flame, their soul would instantly turn into nothingness. Below, Yi Ling was expressionless. When the flame was half a foot above her head, a 7-colored light pillar suddenly shot up into the sky, and within the 7-colored light pillar was a talisman. Critical talisman. Boom. The eerie white flames were directly destroyed by the power released by the critical talisman, and the spirit lamp also became illusory at this moment. Seeing this, the undead emperor hurriedly put away the spirit lamp, and looked at Yi Ling, a 7-colored talisman. In this world there is almost no chaotic aura. How can you have a 7-colored talisman? A 7-colored talisman in the hands of an expert of Yi Ling's level was extremely terrifying. Yi Ling looked at the undead emperor. "My brother drew it for me." The undead emperor narrowed his eyes. "Your brother?" Yi Ling did not waste any time. She stretched out her hand and the 7-colored talisman flew directly to her scythe. In an instant, the black aura on the scythe was directly shattered by the power of the critical talisman. The scythe returned to normal. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly disappeared. In the distance, the undead emperor's pupils shrank, and he clenched his fists. Darkness, extermination. A black light suddenly engulfed him and Yi Ling, but in the next moment the black light exploded, and the undead emperor frantically retreated. At this moment the blood-red scythe in Yi Ling's hand suddenly flew out. Infinity Edge. The moment the blood-red scythe flew out, it immediately became illusory as if it did not exist in this space. In the distance, the undead emperor's expression changed, and he clasped his hands together. Azura's wrath. As soon as he said this, a powerful force suddenly swept out from his body. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of feet began to boil like boiling water. It was extremely shocking. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly roared, "Infinity Break." The blood-red scythe in her hand suddenly exploded. Rumble. The surrounding space directly exploded, and at the same time, a figure frantically retreated. This person was the undead emperor. After retreating a few thousand feet, the undead emperor finally stopped, and at this moment one of his arms had disappeared. In the distance, Yi Ling stretched out her hand. "Gather." As soon as she said this, a blood-red scythe once again appeared in her hand. Yi Ling slowly walked towards the undead emperor with the scythe in her hand. At this moment, a light laugh suddenly rang out. "Worthy of being the strongest great emperor in the 5th dimension. Powerful, truly powerful." Yi Ling turned her head and not far from her right, stood a woman in a red dress. Yi Ling stared at the woman in the red dress. "Devouring Spirit Clan." The woman in the red dress said with a smile, "Good eyesight, you actually saw through my origin at a glance." Yi Ling looked at the undead emperor. "It turns out that the Devouring Spirit Clan is secretly helping you." The undead emperor laughed. "You didn't expect this?" Yi Ling pointed the scythe at the woman in the red dress. "Come, let me see what the Devouring Spirit Clan is capable of." The woman in the red dress slightly raised the corner of her mouth. "I won't let you down." As soon as she said this, she gently clapped her hands, and around Yi Ling 4 white-haired old men in white robes suddenly appeared, and under their feet, there were 4 strange light arrays. At this moment, Yi Ling directly attacked, and the scythe in her hand instantly flew out. Obviously, she knew that the Devouring Spirit Clan was activating the array, so she did not wait for the array to form, but directly attacked. Unfortunately, the moment she attacked, 4 rays of white light suddenly shone on her, and her scythe also stopped at this moment. At this time, the 4 white-haired old men began to quickly chant incantations, and the surrounding space trembled violently. Countless tiny white runes appeared out of thin air, and Yi Ling, who was in the center, felt her aura suddenly plummet. Yi Ling's eyes narrowed slightly, and she suddenly pressed her hands forward. Rumble. A powerful force swept out in front of her, but the next moment, a white, forbidden word suddenly appeared above her head, and then the force disappeared without a trace. Yi Ling's expression was calm, and she began to slowly clench her hands, and the space she was in began to directly explode. At this time, the woman in the red dress in the distance suddenly said, Hold her, don't let her break the boundary and enter the triple-dimensional space. As soon as her voice fell, the undead emperor directly rushed in front of Yi Ling, and a black light submerged him and Yi Ling. After a few breaths, the black light suddenly exploded. Rumble. The surrounding space trembled violently, and the undead emperor was directly sent flying. But at this time, countless white light beams like iron chains shackled Yi Ling, and at this time, Yi Ling's aura was now no different from that of an ordinary person. In the distance, the woman in the red dress smiled slightly. Forbidden Spirit Array. This array was created by my ancestors based on the Prophet's 6 paths of truth. This formation isn't activated by just 4 people. In my clan, there are 1,200 super experts working together to activate this formation. Not only are these 1,200 light beams suppressing your realm, but they're also sealing the spiritual chi around your body. Once you're sealed, you won't be able to use spatial techniques, divine abilities, forbidden techniques, Tao laws, nomological techniques, or your physical and soul strength. As she said that, the corners of her mouth slightly curled up. Come, let us send this world's last great emperor on his way. As soon as her voice fell, the 1,200 light beams suddenly burned. Inside the array, Yi Ling slowly closed her eyes, and at this moment, the scene in Qingqing surfaced in her mind. That young man, the young man who valued her more than his own life. Yixian. Yi Ling's mouth suddenly curled up into a smile. In this life I am fortunate to have met you. I wish to be your sister in my next life. At this time suddenly, a roar suddenly came from the horizon. Who the hell dares to touch my sister? P.S. The annual meeting is over. Without a doubt, in terms of appearance, I am number 1. Chapter 909. Who the hell dares to touch my sister? As the voice rang out, the sky in the distance was suddenly torn apart by a sword radiance. In the next moment, the sword radiance dissipated and a man appeared in front of Yi Ling. The man was Yi Xian. Yi Xian had a ferocious look on his face and exuded a violent aura. Not far away, the woman in the red dress sized up Yi Xian and shook her head with a smile. Pointless sacrifice. Stupid. Yi Xian ignored the woman in the red dress and turned to look at Yi Ling, who was imprisoned by the white light. Yi Ling was also looking at him. Why? Yi Xian held the executing heaven sword tightly in his hand and did not speak. Yi Ling shook his head. Let's go. Avenge me in the future. Yi Xian grinned. I don't want to care about the future. I only want to care about the present. Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian. You will die. Yi Xian smiled. I am very afraid of death, but for you I am not afraid of death. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed forward. Boom. A sword radiance fiercely slashed the light rays. However, the sword radiance exploded and the powerful force instantly blasted him hundreds of feet away. At this moment, the woman in the red dress suddenly laughed. Ignorant. Do you know this formation? At this moment, Yi Xian rushed out again. The woman in the red dress had no intention of stopping him, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Soon Yi Xian slashed the light rays again. This time he directly used the immeasurable sword. Boom. The sword radiance shattered and Yi Xian flew out again. In the distance, after Yi Xian stopped, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and was about to attack again. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly shook his head. Enough. Yi Xian rushed out again. Boom. A ray of light exploded, and then Yi Xian was blasted flying once more. This time he was blasted 3 kilometers away. Moreover, his entire right arm had split apart. Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and he was just about to attack again when Yi Ling suddenly shouted, Enough! Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling and Yi Ling stared at Yi Xian. That's really enough. At this moment, all of her vitality was being devoured by the formation. Ah! Yi Xian raised his head and roared as he charged forward with his sword. Not too far away, the dead emperor was about to attack. However, the woman in a red dress raised her hand and stopped the dead emperor. The undead emperor looked at the red-dressed woman. The red-dressed woman smiled and said, Don't you think this scene is very interesting? The undead emperor gazed at Yi Xian. It was obvious that Yi Xian had failed again. Yi Xian was blasted flying again, and he suffered the backlash of the formation as well. Just like that, Yi Xian tried again and again, but he failed every single time. By this time he was already covered in cuts and bruises, because the counterforce of the formation was really too strong. Right when Yi Xian was about to charge forward again, Yi Ling suddenly roared furiously, Big brother. Yi Xian stopped and looked at Yi Ling with a slightly stunned expression. Big brother. He hadn't heard such a form of address for quite some time. Yi Ling gazed at Yi Xian while 2 streams of clear tears flowed down her cheeks, and her voice was trembling slightly. "Big brother, that's enough. It's really enough. Don't attack again." "Why not?" Right at this moment, the red-dressed woman suddenly smiled and said, "I think he can do it." Yi Ling suddenly turned to look at the red-dressed woman and said fiercely, "You're courting death." She clenched her fists, but she couldn't use any power. Even if she wanted to burn her soul, she couldn't. She was locked. "Ah." The red-dressed woman suddenly laughed. "Shura Empress, if you have the ability, come out and hit me. Come out." Yi Ling stared at the red-dressed woman. At this moment, her entire face was distorted. The woman in a red dress was just about to say something when Yi Xian suddenly charged towards Yi Ling. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of the woman's mouth when she witnessed this scene. She wasn't arrogant, but she had enough confidence. This formation was the top formation of the Devouring Spirit clan. It could be said that even among all the formations in the entire 5th dimension, it could be ranked in the top 5. Moreover, in order to activate this formation, the Devouring Spirit clan had sent more than 1,200 top experts. Of course, the Emperor of the Dead was helping to restrain Yi Ling, otherwise, this formation alone wouldn't be able to trap an expert like Yi Ling. As for Yi Xian, he couldn't threaten this formation at all. However, at this moment, the Emperor of the Dead roared, "Stop him!" The red-dressed woman's expression also changed. The moment Yi Xian rushed in front of Yi Ling, Yi Xian's entire body was covered in blood. Most importantly, Yi Xian's aura had reached an unimaginable level. Bloodline power. This time, Yi Xian activated the bloodline power because he knew that if he didn't, he wouldn't be able to save Yi Xian. Not only did he activate the bloodline power, but he also used the Space Dao Law and the Executing Heaven Sword. As for the consequences, he didn't care about them at all. At this moment, the red-dressed woman and the Emperor of the Dead couldn't stop him in time. They could only watch as Yi Xian slashed at the light beams. Boom! An explosion resounded abruptly, and then the beams of light cracked apart under the astounded gazes of the undead emperor and the woman in a red dress. Meanwhile, Yi Ling suddenly roared furiously as she clenched her fists tightly, and then a powerful force swept out from within her. In an instant, the beams of light were obliterated. However, Yi Xian was also sent flying. Just as he was about to hit the ground, a hand caught him. It was Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling's entire body emitted an extremely violent aura. Her eyes were as sharp as a blade, sending chills down one's spine. However, when she looked at Yi Xian in her arms, her gaze instantly softened. Yi Xian was covered in blood. The blood in his body was boiling like magma. His aura also skyrocketed at this moment. Yi Ling placed her right hand lightly on the center of Yi Xian's eyebrows, and a powerful force instantly enveloped Yi Xian. However, she wasn't able to suppress Yi Xian's bloodline easily this time. Yi Xian's bloodline had improved along with his strength, and Yi Xian's current strength couldn't be compared to before. Moreover, he'd activated his bloodline in a fit of rage. Therefore, his bloodline power was extremely powerful now, and even Yi Ling wasn't able to suppress it for a time. Seeing that Yi Xian was about to completely enter a state of madness, Yi Ling suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Brother." Hearing Yi Ling's words, Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled slightly. The next moment he suddenly grabbed Yi Ling's throat. Yi Ling's expression changed slightly. Just as she was about to urge her power, she was afraid that she'd hurt Yi Xian, so she quickly stopped. Yi Xian didn't hold back. If it wasn't for Yi Ling's powerful strength, her neck would have been broken. Yi Ling gently grabbed Yi Xian's hand. "Brother?" Yi Xian suddenly frowned. His entire body began to tremble violently, as if he was suffering from some kind of pain. His facial features were severely distorted. He was struggling. He was fighting against his bloodline, which was why he was in pain. If he didn't fight against his bloodline, he wouldn't be in pain at all. Seeing that Yi Xian was in so much pain, Yi Ling slowly closed her eyes. She gently held Yi Xian's cheeks with both hands and said softly, "Brother?" At this moment, Yi Ling also felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. She didn't dare to suppress Yi Xian's bloodline with all her strength, because she was afraid that something would happen. But she knew that if Yi Xian didn't wake up, it was possible that his spiritual consciousness would be completely eroded by the bloodline slaughter. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly let out a furious roar and punched himself in the chest. Boom! Yi Xian flew out directly and finally fell heavily to the ground. At this time, the blood color in his eyes dimmed a lot. Although he hadn't fully recovered, he was much better than before. At this time, Yi Ling appeared in front of Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian's current state, her expression instantly turned ferocious. At this moment Yi Xian could be said to be in an extremely miserable state. His entire body was cracked, especially his chest where there was a huge dent. It could be said that it was too horrible to look at. Yi Ling suddenly turned to look at the woman in the red dress not far away. The woman in the red dress stared at Yi Ling. "Stop her." Yi Ling suddenly said ferociously, "Die." As soon as she spoke, a monstrous evil aura swept out from her body. At the same time, she directly turned into a ray of black light and rushed towards the woman in the red dress. Everywhere she passed, the space instantly exploded. In the distance, the woman in the red dress looked at the dead emperor who didn't move. "What are you waiting for?" The dead emperor fell silent for a moment and then rushed towards Yi Ling. In the end, he still decided to join forces with the woman in the red dress. Because he knew that he couldn't kill Yi Ling on his own. However, he just arrived in front of Yi Ling when he was blasted away by a single punch from Yi Ling. On the other hand, Yi Ling didn't pay any attention to the dead emperor, and she charged towards the woman in the red dress instead. Obviously, Yi Ling intended to kill the woman in the red dress. The woman in the red dress had a calm expression on her face. When Yi Ling arrived in front of her, a thick blue barrier of light suddenly appeared in front of her, and Yi Ling slammed her fist against the blue barrier of light. Rumble. The entire blue barrier of light exploded and transformed into nothingness. Right at this moment, a red blade suddenly slashed towards Yi Ling. Yi Ling didn't dodge, and she just slammed her fist forward. Bang! The red blade exploded, and the powerful force contained within Yi Ling's fist caused the woman in the red dress to retreat repeatedly. Yi Ling took a step forward with a ferocious expression on her face, and then she raised her hands. Shatter. As soon as she raised her hands, the space in an area of over 30 kilometers in front of her was actually lifted up, and it instantly enveloped the woman in the red dress. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the space in front of Yi Ling turned pitch black. Suddenly, the pitch black space in front of her was torn apart, and then an enormous red palm that was over 300 m long suddenly stretched out from within it and pressed down towards Yi Ling. As soon as the red palm appeared here, the space in the surroundings started to seethe violently as if it couldn't endure it. It was an extremely shocking sight. Yi Ling stomped her right foot lightly against the ground and vanished on the spot. In the next moment, a ray of black light shot through the surroundings like a shooting star, and it didn't take long for the ray of black light to collide with the red palm. Rumble. The red palm instantly exploded apart. Meanwhile, Yi Ling casually waved her hand, and the shattered palm was instantly obliterated. But at this moment, the woman in the red dress had vanished. Not only was she gone, but the Emperor of the Dead had vanished as well. Yi Ling returned to Yi Xian's side. When she saw Yi Xian who was still half dead, Yi Ling slowly closed her eyes. After a moment of silence, she suddenly opened her eyes and roared furiously, "Devouring Spirit Clan!" Rumble. Hell started to be obliterated inch by inch. Meanwhile, Yi Ling carried Yi Xian on her back, and she walked step by step towards the distance. "Big brother, your blood won't be shed in vain. Just watch. Little sister will slaughter the Devouring Spirit Clan today." Chapter 9-10. Yi Ling carried Yi Xian away from the shattered hell. Atian and Adi suddenly appeared in front of Yi Ling. When they saw Yi Ling they were shocked. They had never seen Yi Ling so angry. Yi Ling was expressionless. "Pass down my order. Gather all the people of the Shura clan and destroy the Devouring Spirit Clan." Atian hesitated for a moment and then said, "Master, the hell is shattered. Countless evil spirits have escaped." Yi Ling suddenly looked at Atian and a wave of hostility locked onto Atian. "You don't understand?" Atian was shocked and quickly said, "Yes, master." After saying that, he quickly retreated. On the side, Adi bowed and did not dare to speak. Yi Ling gently put Yi Xian down. When she looked at Yi Xian, her expression softened. At this time Yi Xian's aura had calmed down. Under the treatment of the Spring of Life, his body was rapidly recovering. However, he was still not fully awake. Right at this moment, a group of golden-armored experts suddenly gathered in front of Yi Ling. There weren't many of them, only 100 of them, but every single one of them had an aura that was as deep as the sea, and they exuded an oppressive killing intent. The Shura Cavalry. The Shura Cavalry was famous in the past. Among all the Dao soldiers in the fifth dimension, the Shura Cavalry was ranked second, only inferior to the legendary God-burying cavalry. At this time, the 100 Shura Cavalry knelt on one knee. "Master." Yi Ling looked at Adi. "Take care of him." Adi seemed to want to say something but did not dare to say it. Yiling slowly closed her eyes. After a moment she waved her right hand. In a distant palace, a sharp sound suddenly rang out. The next moment, a black light pierced through space and appeared directly in front of Yiling. Within the black light was a weapon. The tip of the weapon was shaped like a needle and was extremely sharp. There was a groove in the front and black blood flowed in the groove. At the end of the weapon was a dragon-shaped handle. Azura thrust. This was the #1 demon artifact of the Azura kingdom in the past. It was forged by the Azura king using the blood and souls of millions of people. No, that's not right, it was only a semi-finished product. This was because the Azura soul within this Azura thorn had yet to awaken. The Azura soul had formed, but it had yet to awaken. Thus, the Azura sting could only be ranked 5th among all the divine, ghost, and special weapons in the 5 latitudes. In front of it was the 4th-ranked artifact, the Heavenly Blade. This blade was Li Mubai's personal blade and was also the #1 blade in the 5 dimensions. The 3rd was the heaven-measuring ruler of the female headmaster. The ruler could measure the sky with a ruler and the world with a ruler. The 2nd was the sword of eternal life in the land of eternal life. The person who obtained the sword would have eternal life. The 1st was the prison pagoda created by the prophet. It could imprison the sky, the earth, and the gods and demons of the heavens. It could seal the way, seal life, and seal the human immortals of the 10,000 worlds. The #1 divine tool in the 5 dimensions. As for the Azura thorn, the prophet had said that if the Azura soul within the Azura thorn was awakened, it would be above the heaven blade and the heaven measuring ruler. However, because the Azura thorn was a demon artifact, its murderous aura was too strong. Thus, the prophet had temporarily suppressed this peerless demon artifact after obtaining the consent of the Azura king. However, he had also promised to create a new weapon spirit for the Azura thorn to make up for the loss of the Azura tribe. Unfortunately, the prophet had never returned. Now this demon artifact had appeared in the world. Yiling slowly closed her eyes. The Azura thorn turned into a black light and disappeared into her palm. After a while, Yiling suddenly said, "Let's go." After saying that, she disappeared into the horizon with the hundreds of Azura iron horses. On this day the entire 5 dimensions were shocked. The Azura Empress did not care about the Azura Hell anymore? Worldwide Academy. In the courtyard, Zhang Wenxiu was slowly sweeping the floor. She was very serious. Cultivating one's mind. This was something that she had to do every day when the prophet was still alive. The prophet had said that she was too impetuous and needed to cultivate her mind. Only then would she be able to go further. Although she did not like it, she insisted on doing it. Because he would not harm her. If there was anyone in this world that she could trust, it would be the prophet. At this moment, as if she had sensed something, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly looked up at the horizon. Her gaze was like a light that pierced through space. After a while, she frowned slightly. What does that woman want to do? A black-robed old man suddenly appeared in front of Zhang Wenxiu. The black-robed old man said in a deep voice, "Hell has been destroyed and the Emperor of the Dead has appeared. The ones secretly helping the Emperor of the Dead are the Devouring Soul clan." Hearing this, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly turned to look at the black-robed old man. The Devouring Soul clan? The black-robed old man nodded. How dare they? Zhang Wenxiu's expression instantly became ferocious. This trash clan dares to violate the agreement between them and Master. They really deserve to die. The black-robed old man was silent. In the past, the prophet actually wanted to destroy the Devouring Soul clan because the Devouring Soul clan could only be described as insane. In the past, the Devouring Soul clan not only wanted to dominate the 5th dimension, but they also wanted to destroy all living creatures except for the Devouring Soul clan. It could be said that before the prophet appeared, the Devouring Soul clan was the most powerful clan in this universe. They were so powerful that it was indescribable. And the patriarch of the Devouring Soul clan was even more invincible. In his view, other races were like ants except for the Devouring Soul clan. In order to make the Devouring Soul clan stronger, they directly began to devour the living creatures of the 5th dimension. Could be said that that was the darkest era of the 5th dimension. Unfortunately, a prophet appeared in that year. The prophet appeared out of nowhere and directly killed the patriarch of the Devouring Soul clan. Not only that, he also almost destroyed the entire Devouring Soul clan. Unfortunately, he did not do so in the end because there were tens of millions of clansmen in the Devouring Spirit clan. He could not bear to kill all of them, so he signed an agreement with the new patriarch of the Devouring Spirit clan, which was that the Devouring Spirit clan would stay in the spiritual realm forever and would not be allowed to step out. Zhang Wenxiu did not expect that the Devouring Soul clan would violate the agreement and begin to appear in the fifth dimension. Moreover, they directly broke the Azura Hell. Once the Azura Hell was broken, those evil spirits would appear in the world. The fifth dimension would certainly be in chaos because of this. Of course, the most important thing was that the Devouring Soul clan had reappeared in the world. Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, "Pass down the order." Speaking of this, she seemed to think of something and immediately shook her head. "It is useless for you to go. There is no one in this academy who can fight. I will go by myself." The black-robed old man said in a deep voice, "You want to intervene?" Zhang Wenxiu looked at the black-robed old man. "Otherwise, what do you think?" The black-robed old man said, "Shura Empress has already led the Shura Iron Cavalry to fight with the Devouring Soul clan. We can sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, then," Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, "and then reap the benefits." The black-robed old man said in a deep voice, "This matter has nothing to do with us. We don't need to get involved." "Stupid." Zhang Wenxiu shook his head. "Have you ever thought about who the Devouring Soul clan hates the most?" The black-robed old man looked at Zhang Wenxiu. "Us." Zhang Wenxiu said, "Back then teacher suppressed them and even killed their clan leader. But now, what is the situation of our worldwide academy now? With our current situation, do you think they will let us go?" The black-robed old man hesitated and then said, "We can let the Shura Empress fight them to the death. Zhang Wenxiu said coldly, "If we all hold this kind of thinking, we will find that when the Devouring Spirit clan comes for us, who will help us?" Then she looked at the black-robed old man. "Remember, people can be cruel and calculative, but don't be short-sighted. First, we have no grudge against the Shura Empress. Her death will do us no good. Second, teacher killed the patriarch of the Devouring Soul clan and suppressed them for so many years. They must be resentful. They don't dare to go to teacher, but it doesn't mean they won't come to us. Third, the Devouring Soul clan has just appeared and attacked the Shura Empress. What does this mean? It means they are very ambitious." The black-robed old man was silent. Zhang Wenxiu continued, "If they really kill the Shura Empress, it means they can kill the other 6 powerhouses. Therefore at this time, we must stand by the Shura Empress side. If we watch the show with indifference, then the Shura Empress' fate will be our fate in the future." After saying that, she disappeared on the spot. Fu Wenzong. Shen Xinghe, who was in the hall, suddenly stood up and squinted. Something happened. Beside him, Lu Yong asked in a low voice, "What is it?" Shen Xinghe said, "The Devouring Soul clan has appeared." Lu Yong's face changed. "They appeared?" Shen Xinghe nodded. "They unlocked the Dead Emperor's seal and almost killed the Shura Empress with the Dead Emperor. However, they were stopped by Little Master Ancestor. Now, Little Master Ancestor is seriously injured and is healing in the Shura clan. The Shura Empress has summoned the Shura nation's most precious ghost weapon, the Shura Thorn, and is leading the Shura Iron Cavalry to the Devouring Spirit clan." Lu Yong asked, "What should we do?" Shen Xinghe was silent for a while and said, "Help?" Lu Yong hesitated and said, "We have to play big." Shen Xinghe looked at Lu Yong. Lu Yong said softly, "In terms of emotions, Little Grandmaster is a person who values relationships and righteousness. He is not an ingrate. The future of the Talisman sect is in his hands, and we can all rest assured. Personally, the Little Ancestor is the only one in Fu Wenzong who can draw the 7-colored runes. We can all die, but he can't. For him, our whole sect can risk our lives. It's worth it." Shen Xinghe nodded slightly. "Take that thing and come with me." With that, the two of them disappeared from the main hall. Azura Hell. Not long after Yi Ling left, Yi Xian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly sat up and looked at Atian. "Where is she?" Atian hesitated and said, "She went to the Devouring Soul clan. Master said he wants to slaughter the Devouring Soul clan." Yi Xian was stunned. The next moment he stood up and walked away with his sword. As if thinking of something, he suddenly turned to Atian. "Help me spread the word that any expert who has reached the life and death realm can come to me and fight for me, and I will draw a perfect orange rune for him. And if any expert who has reached the heaven secret realm is willing to fight for me, I will draw a 7-colored rune for him. I will draw as many as they come." Atian. P.S. I just came back from Sanya, so the update is late. Sorry. I have broken many people's chrysanthemums. None of the authors were spared. Chapter 9-11. Spiritual World. Yi Ling came to the entrance of the spiritual world with the 100 Shura cavalrymen. In fact, not many people knew about this place because the Devouring Soul tribe had not appeared in the world for a long time. It could be said that most people in this world did not know about the Devouring Soul tribe. The reason why Yi Ling knew the location of the spiritual world was because the Shura kingdom had fought with the Devouring Soul tribe in the past. The Shura kingdom had many detailed records about the Devouring Soul tribe. At the entrance, Yi Ling was expressionless. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not far from Yi Ling. As soon as this old man appeared, the surrounding spiritual energy suddenly disappeared. Devouring Soul tribe. The Devouring Soul tribe was blessed by nature. From birth, they were naturally attracted to spiritual energy. They could easily absorb spiritual energy. The old man looked at Yi Ling. Shura Empress, this is a misunderstanding. Right at this moment, Yi Ling suddenly vanished. In the next moment, a sharp sound resounded in the surroundings, and the Azura spike in Yi Ling's hand had stabbed into the old man's throat before he could react. As soon as it came into contact with the old man's blood, the Azura spike suddenly trembled violently, and then the old man's blood surged out like tidewater and converged into the Azura spike. The old man's eyes widened as he stared at Yi Ling. Yi Ling was expressionless. This is a misunderstanding. Then she opened her palm and the Azura thorn flew back into her hand. The old man was turned into a dried corpse. The Azura thorn could absorb spiritual energy. Yi Ling looked up at the entrance. There was a boundary around the entrance. Shura Empress said, "Go." The Azura thorn in her hand suddenly turned into a black light and flew out. The next moment, boom. The boundary around the entrance of the Devouring Soul tribe shattered. Yi Ling looked calm. "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." As soon as she finished speaking, the Shura cavalrymen behind her rushed out. The cavalry rushed out like a flash flood, with the momentum to break the heavens. Shura cavalrymen. In the past, this cavalry had made countless forces tremble with fear. Because what this cavalry had done the most in the past was slaughtering cities. Wherever they went, not even the fowls and dogs were spared. Therefore they were called Azuras. Right at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept over from the opposite side and pressed down on the Azura cavalry. Yi Ling had no intention of attacking. The Azura cavalry commander suddenly pulled out the scimitar at his waist and roared, "Azura's wrath." In the field, 100 people pulled out the scimitars from their waists and roared. Boom. A powerful aura surged into the sky like dozens of volcanoes erupting at the same time. Rumble. The space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of zhang trembled violently, and the pressure of the expert of the Devouring Spirit clan was directly crushed. The 100 people continued to rush forward with unstoppable momentum. At this moment, the space in front of the Azura cavalry suddenly split open. Shortly after, a white-haired old man walked out. The old man held a pure white mirror in his left hand and a blue staff in his right. The white-haired old man looked at the charging Azura cavalry expressionlessly. When the Azura cavalry was only a few dozen zhang away from him, he lightly pointed at them with the staff in his right hand. "Stop." As his voice fell, the space in front of him suddenly trembled violently. Then countless mysterious runes appeared in this space. At the same time, a mysterious force enveloped the Azura cavalry. Almost in an instant, the Azura cavalry slowed down. In the distance, Yi Ling still had no intention of attacking. The leader of the Azura cavalry suddenly bellowed, "Kill! Kill!" The 100 people roared in unison. Boom. A monstrous killing intent surged from the bodies of the 100 soldiers. This killing intent was like a hurricane sweeping out in all directions. The surrounding space directly split open, and the powerful force forced the white-haired elder to retreat several feet. He frowned slightly. The strength of these Azura cavalrymen was a little beyond his expectations. At this time, the Azura cavalry commander suddenly pointed his scimitar at the white-haired old man. Kill. In an instant, the 100 people charged forward like a flash flood, and their momentum was invincible. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly. His right hand began to move swiftly as he muttered something. The space around him suddenly split open, and numerous pitch-black blades suddenly flew out from the cracks and slashed at the Azura cavalry. These blades were dense like a torrential rain, and they were so dense that it made one's scalp go numb. But the Azura cavalry had no intention of stopping. Charge. They charged faster and faster. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The surrounding space and the ground began to tremble violently, but the blades couldn't stop the Azura cavalry. They charged forward with irresistible force, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived in front of the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man's expressionless face revealed a trace of ferocity, and he suddenly stretched out his left hand. Defend. As soon as he spoke, the white mirror in his left hand suddenly flew out, and in the next moment, a 300 zhang long shield of light appeared in front of him. At this time, the 100 Azura cavalry arrived. Rumble. The shield of light trembled violently and then it cracked. At this time, the leader of the Azura cavalry suddenly leaped up and slashed with both hands. Azura slash. The slash fell. The shield of light was directly torn apart. In the next moment, before the white-haired old man could react, the leader of the Azura cavalry slashed horizontally, and the white-haired old man's head flew into the air. The leader of the Azura cavalry waved his left hand, and the bloody head fell into his hand. He looked up into the distance and his eyes were scarlet. Tu Clan. As soon as he spoke, he took the lead and rushed forward. At this time a light laugh sounded in the sky. Tu Clan? Apart from the prophet, who in this world can slaughter my devouring spirit clan? As soon as the voice fell, a middle-aged man in a white robe appeared in the sky. The current clan leader of the Azura clan, Yuan Ling. Yuan Ling glanced at the Azura Iron Cavalry and smiled. Come on, let my devouring spirit clan experience the strength of the legendary Azura Iron Cavalry. As soon as he spoke, a roar suddenly came from a mountain in the distance. The next moment, a group of cavalrymen in white armor and holding golden spears suddenly rushed into the sky. The Tao soldiers of the Devouring Spirit clan. Devouring Spirit. There were not many of them, only about 100. However, the powerful aura they exuded was no weaker than that of the Azura cavalry. Soon the two cavalrymen clashed. As soon as they began to fight, the sky fell and the earth cracked. They were equally matched. In the sky, Yuan Ling withdrew his gaze and looked at Yi Ling. He said with a smile, Shura Empress, if you do this, both sides will suffer. Obviously, the Devouring Spirit clan did not want to fight to the death with the Shura Empress. Yi Ling looked at Yuan Ling. I will use the rest of my life to destroy your Devouring Spirit clan. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned into a beam of light and shot out. In the battlefield, the space was torn by the Azura Thorn, and a powerful aura enveloped Yuan Ling. Yuan Ling looked at Yi Ling, who was rushing toward him, and sneered, Destroy my Devouring Spirit clan? You. Ridiculous. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his right sleeve. Rumble. The entire sky suddenly darkened, and an explosion resounded through the clouds like a thunderclap. In next to no time, a figure retreated explosively. This person was Yuan Ling. Yuan Ling looked at Yi Ling, who was not far away, and his eyes were solemn. Yi Ling's strength was a little beyond his expectations. At this time, a beam of light suddenly appeared in front of him. In the beam of light was the Azura Thorn. Yuan Ling did not take this stab head-on. Instead, his figure flashed and he retreated hundreds of feet away. However, as soon as he stopped, Yi Ling appeared in front of him again. The next moment, Yi Ling held the Azura Thorn in his right hand and stabbed it forward. Netherworld extermination. As soon as he finished speaking, the Azura Thorn trembled violently, and a powerful force erupted from it. Yuan Ling narrowed his eyes and he suddenly put his hands together. Void Spirit Seal. As soon as he finished speaking, an illusory seal suddenly appeared above his head, and the moment the seal appeared, Yi Ling's Azura Thorn was directly blocked by an invisible force. Meanwhile, Yi Ling suddenly shouted furiously, Break! As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly spun the Azura Thorn in her right hand. Bang! The seal above Yuan Ling's head exploded, and Yuan Ling was instantly blasted over 10 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, his chest suddenly split open and blood flowed out. Yuan Ling raised his head to look at Yi Ling. Needless to say, the Azura Empress who held the Azura Thorn was truly too terrifying. Azura Thorn. This was something that the Azura Monarch had specially created for the members of the Azura tribe. It could perfectly fuse with the members of the Azura tribe, and only members of the Azura tribe could perfectly display the might of the Azura Thorn. In the distance, Yi Ling walked slowly towards Yuan Ling. An extremely powerful aura emanated from her, and this aura was filled with slaughter and ruthlessness. Yuan Ling suddenly took a step forward, and then he slowly closed his eyes while he started to wave his hands lightly. In next to no time, the spiritual energy in the surroundings suddenly gathered towards him at an extremely fast speed, and then a white seal gradually appeared above his head. The Spirit Gather Seal. Meanwhile, Yuan Ling suddenly opened his eyes, and in the next moment he charged forward. At this moment, countless layers of spirit energy enveloped him, and when he arrived in front of Yi Ling, the Spirit Convergence seal above his head suddenly erupted. Yi Ling didn't dodge. She just opened her palm, and the Azura Thorn suddenly flew forward. The sound of something tearing resounded. Rumble. Rumble. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the sky as a powerful storm of spiritual energy swept through the surroundings. Everywhere the storm passed, space was unable to endure its force and started to be obliterated inch by inch. Moreover, two figures were moving about incessantly amidst the storm. It was Yi Ling and Yuan Ling. After around 15 minutes passed, Yuan Ling was blasted flying. At this moment, one of Yuan Ling's arms had flown off. Yi Ling casually waved her hand, and the storm of spiritual energy vanished without a trace. She suddenly turned around to look towards her right, and then she made a grabbing motion with her right hand. The space in front of her exploded apart, and then a woman in a red dress appeared in her grasp. It was that woman in a red dress from the Azura Hell. The woman in a red dress stared fixedly at Yi Ling. A wisp of a ferocious smile arose on the corners of Yi Ling's mouth. "It's a piece of trash like you who forced my older brother to activate his bloodline. I'll consign you to eternal damnation." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly grabbed the woman in a red dress's shoulder and pulled her to the side. Chapter 9:12. The woman in red's body split into two. The scene was too bloody and indescribable. However, the woman in red's soul was still there. However, her soul couldn't escape. The difference in strength between her and Yi Ling was too great. In front of Yi Ling, she didn't even have the strength to fight back. Yi Ling didn't kill the woman in red's soul directly. Instead, she took out a black jar and put the woman in red into it. Inside the jar was a completely different world. Little hell. This was also a treasure of the Shura clan. It was specially used to collect souls. However, it was different from the Azura Hell. This was used to refine souls. Inside the jar, there was tribulation fire that could purify the impurities of the soul. Of course, this purification was extremely cruel because it would burn one's soul for 49 days. Being burned by this fire was worse than death. As soon as she entered the hell, the woman in red was engulfed by the tribulation fire. Ah! Soon, the woman in red's miserable scream came from the jar. "Shura Empress, do you dare to kill me?" Yi Ling was expressionless. "Kill you? Isn't that too merciful? Let me tell you, I will make your entire Shura clan die a horrible death." As she spoke, she looked at Yuan Ling not far away. "Die." With that, she waved her right hand. The Azura sting in her hand turned into a beam of light and flew out. At the tip of the Azura sting, a wisp of red light appeared. In an instant, the space was torn apart like a piece of paper. Not only that, but the Azura sting entered the three-dimensional space. Yuan Ling's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. He knew that if he couldn't take this attack, he would die without a doubt. Yuan Ling didn't take it head-on. He suddenly said, "Attack." As soon as he spoke, rumble. The space around Yuan Ling suddenly trembled. In the next moment, Yi Ling's Azura sting stopped a few feet in front of Yuan Ling. At this moment, 4 beams of white light suddenly locked onto Yi Ling's Azura sting. At the same time, 4 white-robed elders appeared in front of Yuan Ling. All 4 of them wore white robes and held staffs in their hands. At this time, Yi Ling, who was standing in the distance, suddenly opened his palm. The Azura thorn in the middle of the 4 white lights suddenly trembled violently. Waves of powerful energy surged out, causing the 4 white lights to tremble. However, the Azura thorn still couldn't break free from the 4 white lights and was firmly locked in place. In the distance, Yi Ling suddenly clenched her fists and lightly stomped her right foot. Boom! The space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of feet exploded and turned pitch black. At this moment, the Azura spike suddenly broke free from the 4 white lights and returned to Yi Ling's hand. Yi Ling looked at the 4 white-robed old men. She was about to attack when a huge spiritual seal appeared above her head. Bang! A powerful strand of white light suddenly enveloped Yi Ling. However, it exploded in the next moment. However, another strand of white light shot down from the spiritual seal and enveloped Yi Ling. At the same time, numerous white chains suddenly appeared in the surroundings, and they surged madly towards Yi Ling. Moreover, an enormous white formation of light had suddenly appeared beneath Yi Ling's feet. Countless white talismans were revolving madly on the formation, and strands of mysterious energy were ceaselessly pulling Yi Ling, who was above them. In the formation, Yi Ling scanned the surroundings. In the next moment, she swung the Azura dagger in her hand. Countless strands of white light shattered, but countless white chains arrived in front of her in the next moment. Yi Ling suddenly swept the Azura thorn horizontally. Bang! The white chains shattered, but before she could attack again, a strand of white light enveloped her. The white beams and white chains were simply endless, and the spiritual seal above her was ceaselessly absorbing the spiritual energy in the space around her. As for the formation beneath her feet, it was ceaselessly suppressing her realm and strength. At this moment Yi Ling was directly trapped within it, and she was unable to escape. Meanwhile, a white-robed old man in the distance suddenly said, "Come out." As soon as he spoke, the four of them suddenly formed seals. In the next moment, a spiritual sword made of spiritual energy suddenly appeared in the sky. As soon as this spiritual sword appeared, the sky above the devouring spirit clan trembled violently as if it was on the verge of collapsing. The white-robed old man was just about to speak when a sword howl suddenly resounded in the distant sky. In the next moment, a figure charged directly towards the spiritual sword. It was Yi Xian. The white-robed old man frowned slightly when he saw Yi Xian. In the next moment he directly gave up on Yi Ling, and his right hand swept towards Yi Xian from afar. Slash. Buzz. The spiritual sword directly turned into a snow-white sword light and slashed towards Yi Xian. The speed of the sword was extremely fast like a bolt of lightning, and it instantly arrived in front of Yi Xian. Moreover, it contained an extremely large amount of energy. It should be known that this sword was used to slash Yi Ling. And who was Yi Ling? He was the strongest expert in the fifth dimension. Therefore, how could this sword be weak? However, Yi Xian did not dodge and let the sword slash his body. Bang! The sword directly sank into Yi Xian's body, and then a powerful energy erupted from Yi Xian's body like a tide. Seeing this scene, the experts of the devouring spirit clan were all stunned. What was going on? At this moment, the white-robed old man's expression suddenly changed. Not good, he devoured the spiritual sword. Devoured? Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. Devouring sword. In the air, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, even Yi Xian himself was a little stunned. This was because the energy contained in the sword was far beyond his expectations. The energy that erupted from the sword was too terrifying, and his body was almost unable to bear it. At this moment, the white-robed old man suddenly said, "Kill him." Below, the patriarch of the devouring spirit clan Yuan Ling directly rushed towards Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian was shocked. He could not attack at all because he was about to make a breakthrough. However, at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. "I promised you that I would help you twice. Do you want it now?" How could Yi Xian refuse? He hurriedly nodded. "Yes." Zhang Wenxiu nodded, and then she turned around. She opened her palm, and a bolt of lightning suddenly fell into her grasp. A spear condensed from lightning was within the lightning, and she stabbed it forward in the next moment. Rumble. Yuan Ling was forced to stop on the spot by Zhang Wenxiu. Yuan Ling stared fixedly at Zhang Wenxiu. Worldwide Academy's Zhang Wenxiu. The corners of Zhang Wenxiu's mouth curled up slightly. "It's me." Yuan Ling spoke in a low voice. "This has nothing to do with you." Zhang Wenxiu smiled. "I'm just being a busybody." "What? You're not convinced? Hit me if you're not convinced." Yuan Ling stared fixedly at Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu smiled. "If you don't hit me, then I'll hit you." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly swept her spear forward. World Wielder. With a sweep of the spear, a wave of lightning surged out, and the entire horizon was instantly covered by this wave of lightning. In front of Zhang Wenxiu, Yuan Ling's expression changed. He clasped his hands together, and a spiritual seal suddenly appeared in front of him. Then a powerful force erupted from the spiritual seal. Rumble. An explosion suddenly resounded in the sky, and Yuan Ling immediately retreated. As he retreated, countless bolts of lightning exploded, and the entire horizon was a mess. At this moment, the white-robed elder was about to make a move, but he seemed to have thought of something and stopped. The four of them had worked together and used various formations to trap the Shura Empress. If he made a move now and allowed the Shura Empress to escape, then the situation would be dire. The white-robed elder turned to the right. Attack. In the distant mountain range on the right, an angry roar suddenly resounded. In the next moment, a long blade suddenly streaked across the sky, slashing straight at Zhang Wenxiu. The long blade streaked across the sky, and a huge hole was directly torn in the horizon. When the long blade reached 100 feet in front of Zhang Wenxiu, it suddenly slowed down. Seeing this, Zhang Wenxiu sneered, "Second dimension." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeves, and the long spear in her hand flew out, entering the second dimension. Rumble. The space in front of Zhang Wenxiu suddenly exploded, and at this moment, a large blade was directly sent flying. 100 feet away, a middle-aged man suddenly reached out and firmly grasped the large blade. Zhang Wenxiu looked at the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man carried the large blade and walked towards Zhang Wenxiu. As expected of the strongest person below the 6 great powerhouses. Zhang Wenxiu, the strongest person below the 6 great powerhouses. In the 5th dimension, other than the 6 great powerhouses, Zhang Wenxiu was undoubtedly the strongest. In the sky, Yuan Ling glanced at Yi Ling below. At this moment, Yi Ling was still trapped in the Great Array, but the Great Array was already on the verge of breaking. Obviously he could not be trapped any longer. As if thinking of something, Yuan Ling looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura had reached an extremely terrifying level. Obviously he was about to break through. He could not delay any longer. Yuan Ling looked at the middle-aged man beside her. Yuan Xiu, let's work together. Yuan Xiu nodded. If they did not work together, none of them would be able to kill this Zhang Wenxiu alone. The two of them directly rushed towards Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu turned to look at Yi Xian. Just now I have already helped you twice. What I owe you has already been repaid. Now I will help you once. Draw me a 7-colored talisman, deal? Yi Xian's face darkened. This woman was taking advantage of the situation. Seeing that Yi Xian did not speak, Zhang Wenxiu said, "You're not willing? It's okay, I won't force you. I am a very reasonable person." As she said this, she lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "We will meet again. Take care." After saying this, she turned around and left. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He immediately said, I'm willing. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. "I didn't force you, did I?" Yi Xian quickly shook his head. No, I did it willingly. Really, I did it willingly. Zhang Wenxiu nodded. "Remember, you have to draw me a talisman." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and stabbed with her spear. The tip of her spear exploded with lightning, and both Yuan Ling and Zhang Wenxiu were forced to stop by Zhang Wenxiu's spear. Zhang Wenxiu laughed coldly. 2 against 1? You're even more shameless than Yi Xian. Yi Xian was speechless. Where he was, Yi Xian took a deep breath. He decided to leave this woman alone and focus on his breakthrough. However, at this moment, the white-haired old man leading the group suddenly said, "Kill the Empress first." As soon as he finished speaking, numerous blood-red dots like the tips of needles appeared around Yi Ling, and they spread towards Yi Ling. Suddenly, Zhang Wenxiu said, "That's the spirit-devouring forbidden technique. Don't let them get close to her or her cultivation will be devoured. Hurry." When he heard this, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. The next moment, his eyes turned into a sea of blood. Bloodline activation. In an instant, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed. The next moment, he directly rushed down. He cut through everything like a hot knife through butter. When he arrived in front of Yi Ling, the blood-red dots had already spread. Yi Xian, who still had a trace of intelligence, waved his right hand and forcibly put Yi Ling into the prison pagoda. When he was about to act, the blood-red dots instantly drowned him. Boom. The aura around Yi Xian instantly plummeted at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, his bloodline power was not affected at all. On the contrary, it became more and more powerful. When the spirit chi in his body disappeared completely, the blood in his body suddenly rushed out of his body. Boom. In an instant, the entire sky above the spirit-devouring clan turned into a sea of blood. Bloodline mutation. And in that endless sea of blood, there seemed to be a flash of something. Almost at the same time, in a small city far away in the extreme north, a woman in plain clothes who was cooking suddenly raised her head. The woman looked up at the sky, her eyes full of disbelief. "Sir's aura. P.S. Asking for monthly votes. Although I know I might be scolded, I still ask for it. Asking for monthly votes, asking for official subscriptions." A strand of powerful spirit energy suddenly erupted from within the seal. Rumble. The sky trembled violently as Yi Xian was instantly blasted flying, and the execution heaven sword in his hand suddenly flew out while he was flying backwards. The boundless sword. It arrived in an instant. The white-haired old man's expression changed slightly. He took a step back and then he sat on the ground and grabbed forward. This grab directly grabbed onto Yi Xian's execution heaven sword. However, the tip of the execution heaven sword had stabbed half an inch into the center of his forehead. The execution heaven sword trembled violently, but it was unable to move another inch forward. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above the white-haired old man. A heavy sword had suddenly appeared in his hand, and he held it with both hands as he swiftly slashed it down. This slash carried the might to collapse the heavens and the earth. Meanwhile, the white-haired old man suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's execution heaven sword and stabbed it towards Yi Xian's stomach. He was even swifter. However, he'd overlooked something, and it was that Yi Xian wouldn't dodge at all. So, it was just as the white-haired old man wished. His sword stabbed into Yi Xian's stomach while Yi Xian's sword struck his head. Bang! The white-haired old man's figure was blasted flying. When he finally stopped moving, half of his head had split open. It wasn't just his head, even his entire body had cracked apart like a spider web. But it didn't take long for his body to recover at an extremely swift pace. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when the other 3 white-robed old men by the white-haired old man's side suddenly vanished on the spot. In the instant that the 3 of them disappeared, Yi Ling also disappeared. A sharp voice resounded in the surroundings. The expressions of the 3 white-robed old men changed drastically. They hurriedly stopped and attacked simultaneously. However, Yi Ling's body suddenly became illusory. One of the old men's expression changed drastically. Triple-dimensional space she. As he spoke, a dim light suddenly flew from between his eyebrows. The old man's head was pierced and blood splattered. The other 2 old men retreated frantically and didn't dare to attack again. Without the array to restrain Yi Ling, they were simply useless in front of Yi Ling. Yi Ling looked down. At this moment, Yi Xian had charged into the devouring spirit clan's cavalry. The cavalry was no match for Yi Xian. Every time Yi Xian swung his sword, a bloody head would fly. In a short period of time, Yi Xian had killed more than a dozen devouring spirit clan's cavalrymen. After they were killed, Yi Xian absorbed all their souls and blood essence. After Yi Xian absorbed the blood essence, his aura became stronger and stronger, becoming stronger through slaughter. Seeing that no one could stop Yi Xian, Yi Ling immediately turned to look at the white-haired old man in the distance. The white-haired old man's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly said, "Sacrificial array." As his voice fell, a white beam of light suddenly shot up from the depths of the distant mountain range. The next moment, an illusory giant blade suddenly condensed in the sky above the devouring spirit clan. This giant blade was blood-red in color, and countless tiny blood-red dots were emitting from it. Seeing this blood-red giant blade, Yi Ling stretched out her right hand and the azura thorn appeared in her hand. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu, who was in the distance, suddenly swept the 2 away with her spear and appeared beside Yi Ling. "Don't fight head-on. There is still a mysterious expert in the devouring spirit clan who hasn't taken action yet." Yi Ling looked into the depths of the mountain range. She could feel that there was an obscure aura in the distant mountain range. It was very powerful. Moreover, there was more than one. Zhang Wenxiu continued, "You won't be able to destroy them all by yourself. Moreover, as far as I know, this clan has a spirit-restraining divine array. If this array is activated and they use their experts to pin you down, you can't do anything." With that, she looked at Yi Xian below and said, "He is in a very bad situation now. If he doesn't wake up, he may never wake up." Yi Ling slowly closed her eyes. In the distance, the blood-red giant blade above the devouring spirit clan also stopped and did not move. Obviously, the devouring spirit clan did not want to have a life-and-death struggle with Yi Ling. At this moment, with Zhang Wenxiu here, they could not pin down Yi Ling at all. If they could not pin down Yi Ling, it meant that they could not use the array to trap Yi Ling. In this case, if they wanted to kill Yi Ling, they might have to use the power of the entire clan. Moreover, if Yi Ling chose to escape, it would be difficult for them to kill him even if they gathered the power of the entire clan. Now that the devouring spirit clan had suffered heavy losses, they did not want more people to die. Of course, in the end, it all depended on Yi Ling's choice. If Yi Ling really wanted to have a life-and-death struggle, they had no other choice but to kill Yi Ling at all costs. After a while, Yi Ling suddenly opened her eyes. She flew directly to Yi Xian's side. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed at her with his sword as fast as lightning. Yi Ling did not dodge and Yi Xian's sword did not really slash down. His sword stopped half an inch away from Yi Ling's eyebrows. Looking at the bloody Yi Xian in front of her, Yi Ling's tears suddenly flowed down. The man in front of her, no matter what, would never hurt her. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and rushed into the distance. Yi Ling suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand, and a powerful force directly suppressed Yi Xian. The next moment, she turned around and looked at the white-robed elder and the others in the distance, her face as cold as ice. "Devouring spirit clan, in this life, my brother and sister will slaughter your entire clan." In the depths of the mountain range, a light laugh resounded. "I'll wait for you brother and sister to come." Yi Ling glanced at the depths of the mountain range and then said, "Azura cavalry retreat." After speaking, she turned around and disappeared into the sky with Yi Xian. At this moment, the Azura cavalry also retreated like a tide, and the Devouring Spirit clan's cavalry had lost more than half of its members. This was naturally because of Yi Xian. In the sky, Zhang Wenxiu did not leave immediately. Instead, he looked at the depths of the mountain range and said, "You violated the agreement signed with teacher." In the depths of the mountain range, the voice laughed and said, "The one who signed the agreement was the current patriarch of the Devouring Spirit clan, not us. Moreover, your teacher is no longer in this world, isn't he?" Zhang Wenxiu sneered, "Teacher should not have been merciful in the past." The voice said softly, "In this world, the strong are respected. When your teacher was alive, he was strong and everyone in this world had to reason with him. Our Devouring Spirit clan could not defeat him in the past, so we accepted whatever he said. But now, no one can force our Devouring Spirit clan to be reasonable." Zhang Wenxiu said with a smile, "It wasn't a bad thing for all of you when teacher reasoned with all of you. But now, if your Devouring Spirit clan continues to act like this, then I'm afraid no one will be able to reason with you." The voice laughed and said, "Perhaps. No matter what, this world owes us and we will take it back bit by bit." Zhang Wenxiu shrugged and said, "Good luck to all of you." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and disappeared into the horizon. The patriarch of the Devouring Spirit clan said softly, "These two women are extraordinarily strong." The voice resounded once more in the mountain range, "This world is no longer the world of the past, and our Devouring Spirit clan is no longer the invincible Devouring Spirit clan of all those years ago. Now that our Devouring Spirit clan has emerged into the world, the forces outside will inevitably panic. In order to prevent them from joining forces against our Devouring Spirit clan, send out an order that our Devouring Spirit clan has emerged into the world this time for the supreme treasure in Yi Xian's possession and the Myriad Dimension Library." Hearing this, the patriarch of the Devouring Spirit clan nodded slightly, "Understood." In the depths of the mountain range, a voice sounded softly, "This time no one can stop our Devouring Spirit clan." Chapter 9:14. Azura Hell. Yi Ling directly brought Yi Xian back to Azura Hell. Yi Ling sat cross-legged on the ground. His blood was boiling like magma, and a powerful aura was constantly surging out of his body. Yi Ling gently placed her right hand on Yi Xian's shoulder, and a gentle force constantly surged towards Yi Xian. She didn't dare to suppress it because Yi Xian's blood had mutated. She was afraid that if she used too much force it would backfire. On the side, Zhang Wenxiu curiously looked at Yi Xian. She had to admit that Yi Xian's bloodline was too strange. This was the first time she had seen such a powerful bloodline. At this moment, she was a little curious about Yi Xian's identity. This guy's father or ancestor was definitely not an ordinary person. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes there was a sea of blood. At the same time, a powerful and violent aura exuded from his body. Yi Ling hurriedly grabbed Yi Xian's hands and said in a trembling voice, "Big brother. Big brother." This form of address made Yi Xian's body stiffen. Gradually, the violent aura around him calmed down. Zhang Wenxiu glanced at Yi Ling. This guy actually called Yi Xian Big Brother. This relationship was a little confusing. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian's aura gradually calmed down. Although his blood was still boiling, he wasn't as crazy as before. At least he didn't attack anymore. Yi Ling stood up and turned to look in the direction of the Devouring Soul clan. Her expression was as cold as ice, making people shudder. At this time, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, "Don't be impulsive. You can't destroy the entire Devouring Soul clan by yourself." Yi Ling was expressionless and didn't speak. However, the Azura thorn in her hand was trembling violently. A moment later, Yi Ling turned around and walked in front of Yi Xian. She held Yi Xian's hands tightly and didn't speak. At this time, Fu Wenzong, Xin Xinghe and Lu Yong arrived. When they saw Yi Xian, they were both relieved. When they learned that Yi Xian had gone to the Devouring Soul clan, they immediately rushed over. Unfortunately, they were a little late. The battle was already over when they arrived. At this moment, the space in front of Zhang Wenxiu suddenly trembled. A moment later, Zhang Wenxiu's mouth curled into a sneer. "What Devouring Soul clan said?" Xin Xinghe looked at Zhang Wenxiu and said, "Zhang Yixiu. What do you mean?" Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, "The Devouring Soul clan spread the news that their goal this time is the Universal Library and the treasure in Yi Xian's hands." Hearing this, Xin Xinghe's face immediately sank. "Good plan. Originally, when the Devouring Soul clan appeared, some ancient forces would definitely not sit still. After all, in the past, the Devouring Soul clan almost destroyed the entire fifth dimension. Therefore, when the Devouring Soul clan appeared, in order to protect themselves, many ancient forces would definitely join hands. But now, the Devouring Soul clan said that their goal was the Universal Library and Yi Xian's World Prison Pagoda. Therefore, many ancient forces would definitely not take action. They would just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. They would let the Devouring Soul clan and Yi Xian and the Worldwide Academy fight to the death. This was the reality. If it didn't concern them, they would just ignore it. Xun Xinghe said in a deep voice, "The other forces will definitely be gloating." Zhang Wenxiu said with a smile, "Of course they will gloat." Before this, no one dared to have any ideas about the Universal Library. Whoever fights will die. But now someone has finally come forward. Therefore their chance has come. Saying this, she shook her head. It has been too long. So long that many people have forgotten the terror of the Devouring Soul clan. Xun Xinghe nodded. In fact, he did not know the strength of the Devouring Soul clan because he had not experienced the era of the Devouring Soul clan. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Temple. Ancestor Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly holding the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, looking a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to dismiss Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral temple and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a clan matter. Why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral temple. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. It is everyone's wish. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Oh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on you will be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, do not show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu's head spun and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 9:15. Azura Hell. At this moment Yi Xian's aura had completely calmed down, but he still hadn't woken up. Yi Ling had been guarding him silently from the side. Shen Xinghe and Lu Yong hadn't left either. As for Zhang Wenxiu, he'd slipped away somewhere. Yi Ling gazed silently at Yi Xian, and she'd never let go of Yi Xian. At this moment, the events of the Green City kept surfacing in her mind. Before she'd met Yi Xian, she'd never felt familial love in her entire life. Because she'd shouldered the responsibility of protecting the Azura Hell since she was born. The Azura Hell had trapped the undead emperors, but hadn't it trapped the Azura clan as well? In order to deal with the Azura Hell, she'd utilized the Azura clan's secret technique to enter the cycle of reincarnation to search for the prophet. However, she hadn't expected that she wouldn't be able to find the prophet and would instead become Yi Xian's younger sister. It was this young man who'd made her feel familial love that she'd never felt before. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's fingers suddenly trembled. Yi Ling hurriedly looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Big brother?" Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were still slightly scarlet, but there was some clarity in them. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Ling and said softly, "Ling, Yi Ling instantly smiled when she heard Yi Xian. She'd rarely smiled in her entire life. Yi Xian slowly sat up, glanced at the surroundings and then said, "Have we left the Devouring Spirit clan?" Yi Ling nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian smiled, "It's good that you're fine." Yi Ling gazed at Yi Xian, "Big brother, what do you think?" "What do I think?" Yi Xian's expression instantly turned cold. "Kill them." The Devouring Spirit clan could target him but not Yi Ling. This time, the Devouring Spirit clan had joined hands with the undead emperor to target Yi Ling. They had almost killed Yi Ling. How could Yi Xian tolerate this? Moreover, the Devouring Spirit clan would not let him and Yi Ling off. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Yi Ling nodded slightly. "Kill them." As she spoke, she stood up and looked at the Azura spike in her hand. "I have two things to do now. The first is to find the undead emperor and those vengeful spirits and evil spirits that have escaped. I once promised my master that I wouldn't let those vengeful spirits and evil spirits escape to bring disaster to the world." Yi Xian asked, "What's the second thing?" Yi Ling said, "Awaken the Azura soul." Awaken the Azura soul. Shen Xinghe's eyelids twitched. Yi Xian did not know how terrifying the Azura spike was. But they did. If the Azura soul in the Azura spike was awakened, the Azura spike would instantly surpass Heaven Blade and Heaven Measuring Ruler. And with Yi Ling's terrifying strength, it was scary just thinking about it. Yi Ling looked at the horizon and said softly, "From now on, my Azura clan's Azura Iron Cavalry will be under your command. Other than them, the Azura Kingdom has 12 Azura Death Guards. I've already ordered them to hurry back. When they return they will look for you and you will command them." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "Be careful of the Devouring Spirit clan. I will find you after I am done." As she spoke, she turned into a dim light and disappeared into the horizon. After Yi Ling left, the commander of the Azura Cavalry suddenly came before Yi Xian and knelt on one knee. "Subordinate Yi Qiu greets young Master Yi." The Azura cavalry behind him also knelt down. Yi Xian said softly, "Rise?" All the Azura cavalry stood up. After the battle with the Devouring Spirit clan, there were only 79 Azura cavalry left. They had lost 21 people. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at Xin Xinghe. "Old Xin, as far as I know, our talismans can be infused into weapons, right?" Xin Xinghe nodded. "Yes, but we are not good at it. Only the crafting sect can do it." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "How about this? We will draw a batch of perfect orange talismans and ask the crafting sect to infuse them into weapons." Xin Xinghe glanced at the Azura cavalry. "For them?" Yi Xian nodded. "Can we?" Xin Xinghe thought for a moment and then said, "I have an idea. Not only can we infuse their weapons with talismans, we can also infuse them with perfect orange defensive talismans." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "If that's the case, we will need a lot of talismans. Moreover, we may need to forge new equipment for them." Xin Xinghe smiled. "We, the Fu Wenzong, may not have much, but we have a lot of money." "A lot." Yi Xian. Lu Yong also smiled. "Little ancestor, you don't have to worry about that. With the financial resources of the Fu Wenzong, we can arm them to the teeth. Moreover, we can use the best equipment and talismans. Not only that, we can also ask the crafting sect to make them some tailor-made equipment. Apart from that, we can also ask the alchemy sect to make some top-grade pills for them to increase their strength." Yi Xian was a little hesitant. The Azura cavalry were not Fu Wenzong's soldiers. Moreover, he had never thought of bringing them to Fu Wenzong and making them part of Fu Wenzong. After all, they were Yi Ling's own people. As if he knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Lu Yong smiled. "Little ancestor, don't worry too much. Right now we are in the same boat as the Shura Empress. We, the Fu Wenzong, will not care about such a small benefit." In fact, Fu Wenzong was very happy at this time. It should be known that although the Fu Wenzong was a big force in the fifth dimension, their own combat power was not enough. Because of Yi Xian, the Fu Wenzong already had many hidden enemies. Now there was the Devouring Spirit race. In this case, being able to ally with the Shura Hell was undoubtedly a great thing for Fu Wenzong. The Shura Empress alone was enough to intimidate countless people. Hearing Lu Yong's words, Yi Xian nodded. He looked at Yi Qiu in front of him. "Commander Yi, bring everyone from the Shura Hell and follow me to Fu Wenzong." Yi Qiu cupped his fist. "Understood." With that, he turned around and left. The Shura Hell did not only have the Shura cavalry. There were also some experts. However, the Shura cavalry was the strongest. At this time, Tian and Di also came in front of Yi Xian. Tian looked at Yi Xian. "Master asked us to follow you." Yi Xian nodded. "Follow me back to Fu Wenzong." Tian nodded. "Okay." They now understood the position of Yi Xian in Yi Ling's heart. Incomparably important. Soon Yi Xian led everyone back to Fu Wenzong. Banished Immortal City. Somewhere in the city by a river, Li Mubai walked out of the thatched hut. He sat by the river and took out his fishing rod. Beside him, Li Shijuan stood respectfully. After a long time, the fishing rod in Li Mubai's hand suddenly trembled, but he did not care. Li Shijuan softly said, "Uncle." Li Mubai said, "The Devouring Spirit race has appeared." Li Shijuan was curious. "The Devouring Spirit race that almost destroyed the entire fifth dimension?" Li Mubai nodded. Li Shijuan solemnly said, "They came out to target the Shura Empress. They are very ambitious. However, with their current strength, they should not be able to destroy the entire fifth dimension." Li Mubai shook his head. "You underestimate them." Li Shijuan looked at Li Mubai. "Uncle, please enlighten me." Li Mubai smiled. "Shijuan, do you know why I admire Yi Xian?" Li Shijuan solemnly said, "He is very strong." Li Mubai shook his head. "Shijuan, your talent is not worse than his, and your strength is not much worse than his. However, you are inferior to him in one aspect. Courage and spirit." Li Shijuan was silent. Li Mubai continued, "When he faced me, he was neither servile nor overbearing. When you faced me, you were very respectful, but too respectful, to the point that you lost yourself." Li Shijuan respectfully saluted. "Uncle, I have something to tell you. I want to go out and explore." Li Mubai looked at Li Shijuan. The latter softly said, "Staying by Uncle's side, I feel a lot of restrictions. This is not a good thing for me. Therefore, I want to go out and explore. Maybe I will gain something." Li Mubai nodded. "Your idea is very good." As he said this, he looked at the distant horizon and softly said, "Now that the Devouring Spirit race has reappeared in the world, this world will not be peaceful. Of course, many opportunities will appear along with it. It is a good thing for you to explore. Li Shijuan respectfully saluted. Uncle, take care. After saying this, he turned and left. At this time, a saber wrapped in white cloth suddenly appeared in front of Li Shijuan. Li Shijuan was stunned. Uncle, this is the heaven saber. What do you mean? Li Mubai softly said, I have been waiting for the right time to give it to you. Now the time has come. Li Shijuan shook her head. Uncle, this saber is yours. Li Mubai smiled and said, your uncle has not used this kind of external object for many years. This saber is no different from a piece of wood to me, but it is different in your hands. Don't be long-winded. Take it. Li Shijuan did not hesitate anymore. He took the heaven saber and respectfully saluted again. Uncle, take care. After saying this, he turned and left. After a while, he disappeared from Li Mubai's sight. Li Mubai withdrew his gaze and looked at the river in front of him. At this time, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared beside Li Mubai. The middle-aged man looked at the river and smiled. Good mood. Li Mubai lightly said, 3 breaths. If you are still standing here, believe me, your head will definitely be separated from your neck. The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. You know that you can't kill me. Li Mubai looked at the middle-aged man. Then try? The middle-aged man smiled and said, listen to me. If you are not tempted, then I will leave immediately and not disturb you again. As he spoke, he glanced at the thatched hut and said, my devouring spirit clan has a mysterious forbidden technique, the soul revival forbidden technique. This forbidden technique has the ability to defy the heavens. So long as one's soul is not destroyed, then one can utilize this forbidden technique to bring someone back to life. The fishing rod in Li Mubai's hand suddenly shattered into nothingness. The middle-aged man smiled and said, if you are willing, then the experts of my clan can execute this forbidden technique for your beloved right now and bring her back to life. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.